So with that, we're coming out of closed session. It's 7:20. Thank you all for your patience. We had to wrap up some things in there. If we would, we'd all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, agenda item D, and stay for the standing for the national anthem, which will be be performed by the Westwood Band Chamber Musician Ensemble under the direction of Thomas Turpin. So,
Yes. In leading us in tonight's pledge is Diego Maraz.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
all right, just realize we need to go back to agenda item D1, executive sessions coming out, motions coming out of executive session. Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes, I move that the board approve the renewal of employment contracts to staff members as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Have a motion and a second as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 7-0. All right, thank you. All right, we're going to adjust the, we are going to go to agenda item F, but we will adjust the agenda a little bit later on. So with that, we'll go, E, approval of minutes. So with that, do I have a motion on that? Anybody? I know we're all kind of jumping back in here.
I move that the board approve the minutes for the board meetings held on April 18th and 29th and May 3rd and 9th, 2019 as presented.
Second.
Got a motion, a second for the minutes as presented on the dates as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 7-0. All right, we'll go to agenda item F1, board recognitions and introductions for May. Dr. Flores.
Yes, as we get ready for graduation, we do know that May is an important month, obviously, and it signals almost the end of the year, but we're not there yet. So with that, we have staff recognition, student recognition. So Maritza Gallaga.
Good evening, President Chadwell and trustees. I'm excited to have the opportunity tonight to be in front of you to showcase some of the latest and greatest achievements in Round Rock ISD. Tonight we'll be celebrating state champions, world-class performances, and honoring some of our valued district partners. Could I please get the trustees and Dr. Flores in front of the dais at this time? Our first recognition takes us to the Texas Science and Engineering Fair. Students from Canyon Vista Middle School and Westwood High School competed at the Texas Science and Engineering Fair in March and took home some of the top prizes of the competition. The fair, operated by the University of Texas at San Antonio's College of Sciences, is an annual state science competition for students in 6th through 12th grade. The fair provides an opportunity for discourse among like-minded, high-achieving middle school and high school students across Texas. Please join me in welcoming the following students who received top honors. From Canyon Vista, we have Armand Chiaretti, who placed second in physical and energy from Canyon Vista Middle School. And then we have some students from Westwood who could not be with us today. Sadvik Dasari, who placed first in embedded systems. Prabhav Vangari, who placed third in transitional medical sciences, and Sinhuju Upalari, who played third in animal sciences. Canyon Vista principal is Nicole Haggerty, and Westwood principal is Mario Costa. Congratulations to these students. Thank you. For our next highlight, it keeps us at Westwood High School. Continuing the Westwood Speech and Debate program's tradition of excellence, 60 students competed at the Texas Forensic Association State Speech and Debate Tournament in Houston in March. The students represented 41 entries, which is one of the highest in the program's history and the largest in the state of Texas. At the state tournament, Westwood juniors Vikas Buguri and Daniel Shi won third place in the varsity policy debate category. To reach this level and to compete throughout the year, students attend tournaments from August to February to qualify for the state tournament. Please join me in welcoming Vikas and Daniel. Westwood UIL academic coordinator is Rushi Wang, and Westwood High School principal is Mario Costa. Congratulations. We move from our students to our district distinguished partners. Tonight we are recognizing the Service Coalition of Round Rock, also known as SCORE, as a Round Rock ISD distinguished partner. SCORE is comprised of community service organizations, including Kiwanis, Rotary, Lions Club, Sertoma, Just Serve, Annie's Way, and Al Amistad. These groups come together performing deeds for the benefit of the community, especially our youth. In every event sponsored by SCORE, emphasis is placed on the importance of service to others, fellowship, friendship, diversity, integrity, leadership, and self-determination. SCORE members interact with high school students throughout the years for apprenticeships, mentorship programs, summer camps for students with physical disabilities, and much more. Through years, the service organizations have contributed more than $2 million in college scholarships to Round Rock ISD students. Representing SCORE today, we have Gladio Cruz, Tino Hernandez of Annie's Way, Shirley Dillman of the Lions Club, Frank Santos of El Amistad, and Stacy Atkins of Just Serve. He doesn't want to take a photo. That's it. I called his name. You got to go up. Thank you for all that you do. And now we'd like to call Gladio back up to the podium to share just one of the activities SCORE is involved in at Double File Trail. And it looks like he brought some students here with him.
Thank you very much. I started in October with a running club at really Forest North Elementary, and I had 5 kids, and you'll see them there on the upper left-hand side. And the whole idea behind it is working with them in regards to just developing their confidence, determination, grit, all of this that comes into play. Once we ran the race, and it was a 5K run, for those of you that are non-runners, it's 3.1 miles that 4th and 5th graders managed to run. And again, what I taught them is we leave nobody behind. Once you finish your race, you go back and you run with our partner, till the end. And these guys did a fantastic job. I had 5 of them, but only 2 are able to be with us. So Diego and Arlene, you want to go to the front? And they earn medals, and they also raise money for the Play for All Abilities Park. So it's service to others. Yes. Chad, you got Aylin's. And turn around, guys. But like the Service Coalition here, it's all about working with others, and they do a lot of work in the school, so this is part of the program that they represent. Thank you again.
All righty, we'll have one principal introduction tonight, but trustees and Dr. Flores, you guys can be seated at this time. And do a quick introduction. We're excited to announce that Dorian Marvel has been selected as the new principal of Laurel Mountain Elementary School, where she will replace Jan Richards, who will be retiring at the end of the school year. Dorian most recently served Round Rock ISD as the assistant principal of Pearson Ranch Middle School since the campus was opened in 2017. She also worked as an IB coordinator at both Grisham Middle School and Spicewood Elementary School, and as an instructional technology specialist and teacher at Spicewood. She has over 20 years of experience in education. She has a long-standing history of creating innovative learning experiences for students and collaborating with campus staff and leaders to enhance the learning environments that serve our community. She is a passionate educator and leader, and we are confident that Laurel Mountain Elementary School will continue to thrive under her leadership. So, Dorian, if you'd like to come up and say a few words.
President Chadwell, board members, and Dr. Flores, I'm honored to stand before you as the new principal of Laurel Mountain Elementary School. I know I would not be standing before you had it not been for the wonderful leadership opportunities and amazing role models I have had since coming to Round Rock ISD. The last 2 years, I have had the honor of helping open Pearson Ranch Middle School and was a part of creating a culture of excellence that I'm very proud of. I want to thank Pearson Ranch staff and the community, and especially Principal Kim Winters, for growing me personally and professionally. I know you will continue to inspire me with your path of innovation and success. I'm honored to follow in the footsteps of retiring Principal Jan Richards and look forward to carrying on the tradition of academic achievement, enrichment, and joyful learning that she and the Laurel Mountain staff have established. I am beyond thrilled to be joining such an engaged, supportive, and innovative community. Thank you again, Dr. Flores and board, for the amazing opportunity to lead such a wonderful and accomplished school.
And that concludes our recognitions this evening.
Thank you, Maritza. We'll go to agenda item G, public communication regarding items not on the agenda. And it looks like we have 8 or so here. Let me read this statement. Once again, I think everybody knows the protocol, but I'm going to read it again just for reinforcement. And we have some agenda comments for items on the agenda, so we'll get to those in a minute. But with that, I will read this off real quick. There you go. Thank you. All right. So at each regular meeting, the board will set aside 20 minutes to afford the general public an opportunity to speak to the board regarding matters of concern or interest to the district other than the character of any student, staff, or board member. concerns or complaints regarding specific individuals should not be raised in public forum. They should be considered separately according to applicable board policies. The board requests that comments on any subject, whether positive or negative, be courteous and respectful. At the time the 20-minute limit is reached, the board will proceed to other business, and persons who have not yet spoken will be rescheduled to the later part of the meeting in the public communication section. I'd like to remind the audience and the viewers that the comments of the speakers reflect their own positions or opinions. The board cannot discuss or act upon any matter that is not listed under the action item portion of the agenda. Therefore, the board members may not discuss the comments of speakers. Please understand that a lack of response from a board member does not, or the board members does not indicate agreement or approval of the comments. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the board. The spokesperson for a group will be allowed 5 minutes. If you have a group, please raise your hand when you step forward and let us know. And then Ms. Gonzalez will be the designated timekeeper. Two things I do want to reinforce. There is a timer on the dais. We are going to ask that you follow the 3-minute limit as a courtesy for us to try to get out of here and respect everybody's time. And then secondly, I will reinforce the statement about specific comments about employees, board members, or anybody else. So just keep your comments courteous and respectful. So with that, I'll go to the first on the to be called up. I'll call a couple at a time just so to make it quicker, but the first one will be June Zhao, and you'll be representing yourself. Is that right, June? Okay. And then next will be Maria Glaza. So just be ready.
Thank you. Respected Board Trustee and Dr. Flores. I'm here today to advocate for adopting Naviance or other similar software applications at Round Rock ISD. For people who don't know what Naviance is, here's some background information. Naviance is a web-based software service which provides tools for course planning, college research, and career assessment. The software system collects data and compile a statistic to show students within their own high school how many applied, how many accepted, and how many denied by a specific college in the past. It also allows school counselors to track the progress of students and make it easier to request transcripts and recommendation letters and to search for scholarships. Almost half of all high schools in the U.S. has already adopted Naviance, including our neighboring schools such as Leanda School District. So web-based software systems such as Naviance can improve equity and access for first-generation and low-income students. It will help students identify their strengths, explore careers, and track milestones and deadlines and match to their best fit college. Studies have shown that adopting Naviance, schools saw 4-year college acceptance and enrollment rate increased significantly. Another reason I argue for the adoption of this self-service software application is that our high school counselors are overwhelmed. If we can streamline the college planning process with this data-driven approach, maybe our counselors can have more time with our students on things like mental health, stress issues that are equally, if it's not more important. In short, I asked the school district administration to look into the possibilities, evaluate the cost and the benefits of adopting Naviance or other software service for college and career planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next will be Maria Glaza, and then after that will be Hannah Friedman. You're speaking for yourself, right?
Yes. Okay. Good evening. Tonight I have come to speak on behalf of a Round Rock teacher that chooses to remain anonymous. This person has written a letter that says, I am a teacher at McNeil High School. This district has created an environment where I fear retribution for these statements, and I've asked educators in Solidarity to read for me. Our administrative staff and counselors need training on coded language and the negative impacts of using coded language. Throughout this year, I have heard our principal and our counselors use coded language like they don't know what we're doing here, or those parents don't have a clue, or if these kids would just act right when discussing students and parents of color on our campus. These coded phrases allow plausible deniability for our administration. I'm sure the speakers would deny that they are even thinking about race, but any person of color who has experienced this type of speak knows exactly what they mean. Some leaders even proclaim that they don't see color and wear this as a badge of honor. The behaviors I've seen by leaders on our campus are problematic and must be addressed in order to build our capacity to support racial equity transformation in Round Rock ISD. I ask that the board please require all Round Rock ISD staff to receive racial equity training and ensure that all employees engage in culturally and racially relevant pedagogy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clausen. Up next is Hannah Friedman, and then after that will be Elizabeth Wilson.
Good evening. I'm Hannah Friedman, and I am a member of the group of local Austin educators, Educators in Solidarity. And we are a group working to build our collective capacity as anti-racist educators through activism, advocacy, and outreach. We believe that educators are uniquely situated to address racism by effecting institutional change and empowering students to self-advocate. We are committed to ongoing dialogue about systemic racism in our schools and communities. And today I'd like to share some of the things that we would like to see in Round Rock ISD and would like to work with the board to make happen in all of the schools. We'd like to have ongoing professional development opportunities for new and veteran teachers in the following areas: restorative practices, implicit bias training, and best practices for culturally proficient teaching. Also creating a racial equity analysis tool for campus staff to use when evaluating campus and district policies and initiatives, including, but not limited to, analyzing racial biases in district benchmarks and evaluating its impact on students. Also, we would love to work with you to provide training for teachers and administrators tools to critically analyze data through a racial equity lens that impacts school programs, instructional practices, and budget issues. Also, to support the development of all parents in becoming powerful advocates for their students and providing them with the knowledge necessary to support student classroom learning. We'd also like to work with the board to increase the number of campuses that are participating in book studies focused on race, including Courageous Conversations About Race, and equity, and ensuring that educators of color are in positions of leadership when facilitating these very important conversations. We would also like to work with you to collaborate with campus librarians, ensuring schools have books and resources that represent their student, family, and teachers. We'd also like to work with the Human Resources Department to develop hiring criteria that reflects Round Rock ISD's commitment to cultural proficiency and anti-racism. These issues are very important, and we would like to see the board take courageous action to address the ongoing issues of racism throughout the district. The community needs to be aware of what's been happening under the district's watch. This has been happening, and the time is up. Our community needs to know these things are happening, and we would like to partner with you to ensure that we are doing what's best for our students and families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman. Up next is Elizabeth Wilson, and after that will be Ann Daly Lease, I think. So, anyway.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Wilson. I'm speaking I'm a member of the group Educators in Solidarity, and I'm speaking on behalf of a Round Rock ISD educator who would like to remain anonymous for fear of retribution. As a teacher in Round Rock ISD, I'm grateful for the opportunity to work alongside amazing teachers and truly wonderful students. As we come to the end of the school year, I reflect on the successes and areas of improvement that I can impact directly through improving my craft. I also step away from my own classroom impact and reflect on the bigger picture of our district practices and policies that impact students and teacher success. Both in my classroom and as a district, there are questions that continue to give me pause. They give me pause because I don't know how to answer the questions, and because I also know that asking the question requires vulnerability that takes great courage. Here are a few of my recurring questions. What concrete steps, strategies, and difficult conversations do we need to have in order to improve the hard work of increasing academic achievement for non-white students and decreasing the punitive pipeline that remains in place? What can I as a teacher and we as a world-class district do in a public way to commit ourselves wholeheartedly to the hard work of impacting outcomes for Black and Latino students? Are there people or organizations who have already been in the process of involving themselves in what can be oftentimes lonely work of making equity for all students a real priority, and how can we learn from them? And how can we attract and keep teachers who will positively impact students and staff as well? Again, I don't have the answers, but in our desire to be a truly world-class district, asking the hard questions out loud seems to be an important step to have really match our desires. We can do better, and our students deserve the hard work, every one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Up next is Ann Daly-Lesh, I think, and then after that will be Nicole Gerard.
My name is Ann Daly-Lesh. You got it. I'm also a member of Educators in Solidarity, and I'll also be speaking on behalf of a teacher who would like to remain anonymous for fear of retribution. Dear Round Rock ISD Board, I am a teacher of color in this district and have been for many years. I have been through multiple branding slogans, but the most recent, Round Rock ISD One Family, has been the largest affront to my core value systems. A family is a singular unit, one that is united in the face of adversity. A unit that, together, is more powerful than it is as individuals. But the inequities I witness on a daily basis for the past several years let me know that the slogan is used just that, an empty phrase that looks good on Twitter. Could you watch your child be punished disparately by a teacher and administrators at a rate 4 times that of white students and be silent? Could you watch your sister work in buildings without air conditioning and over 100-degree heat in the summer, like our custodial staff is forced to do? Could you watch your son be arrested for taking animal crackers, while another student receives a lesser consequence for a far greater and egregious offense? Would you stand by while a district attempts to force police armed with implicit bias attached to a gun into our schools, while unchecked by a system that has been recognized by TEA for its alarmingly disparate discipline rates? I would like to share stories beyond the data. Each percentage or fraction, pie chart, and pivot table all represent children. Children who I have seen being intentionally provoked by blatantly demeaning actions by adults. When these students stand up for themselves, they are suspended or sent to RROC. I have been directly told that there are, quote, too many Black teachers on a campus. But when you check the TAPR reports, Round Rock's teaching staff is 4% African American. This is far less than the state average, not representative of our student population, and I have seen little to no efforts to increase these numbers. I have never been told that there are too many white teachers or administrators on a campus. I have witnessed Black and brown students removed from classrooms for the smallest offenses. I have heard teachers make the statement that a parent did not care about their child's education simply because they did not speak English. And perhaps the most disturbing is that I have watched our African American children be treated and talked about like scary adults, and not the beautiful babies that they are and that they do not get a chance to be. How is anyone evaluating our systems to understand how we are an A-rated district with practices and systems based on institutionalized racism? From our early refusal to integrate until 10 years after Brown versus Board, and then only allowing 1 Black student to Round Rock High School.
Thank you, Ms. Lesh. We should be minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Nicole Gerard, and then Mr. David Schmidt.
Hi. Dr. Flores, President Chadwell, and trustees. I'm Nicole Gerard, and I serve as the program director with the Council on At-Risk Youth, or CARY. We are a nonprofit organization serving 4 districts in the Austin area, working to empower at-risk youth with the skills to avoid crime and violence. With the support of this board and the City of Round Rock, we are excited to wrap up our first year of CARY services at the Round Rock Opportunity Center. Throughout this school year, our youth advisor, Mr. Deshaun Walker, has provided group and individual counseling to the highest need students in the district. Since August, Mr. Walker has built relationships, coached through crisis, and facilitated emotional and behavioral growth for 161 students as they have passed through the Round Rock Opportunity Center. Mr. Walker has had over 1,000 interactions with students this school year, ranging from morning check-ins to in-depth explorations of emotions and behaviors. With the guidance of Mr. Posey, the CARRY program at the Round Rock Opportunity Center has been able to grow to best fit the needs of the campus. In addition to tending to the emotional and behavioral needs of the students while enrolled at the Rock, Mr. Walker has assisted in the transition of countless students back to their home campuses through visits to nearly every Round Rock ISD secondary campus, attending transition meetings, and being available in person or on the phone to coach a student through a crisis once they have returned to their home campus. Mr. Walker has also had over 100 interactions with parents, providing the same level of mutual respect and attention that he does with his students. Mrs. Gwen Thomas, the counselor at Round Rock Opportunity Center, is quoted as saying in a mid-year program evaluation, "I find Mr. Walker to be a blessing to our campus. Mr. Walker's gifts far surpass those of many. There is no task too great or too small that he is unwilling to perform, and he does so pleasantly. Going the extra mile seems to be his mantra, and our students have come to expect this behavior from him." And Mr. Posey, the principal at Round Rock Opportunity Center, said, "Mr. Walker's ability to communicate with the families adds another layer of intervention that helps the parents help their children. His interpersonal style and willingness to work with our staff has manifested in many of our difficult students making better decisions and obtaining life skills. I'm here today to say thank you for trusting us with your highest needs, yet most precious students this past school year. We are honored to have the opportunity to make a difference in Round Rock. And thank you for extending that trust to a new year. With your support and backing, we are excited to be returning to the Round Rock Opportunity Center for the 2019-2020 school year. Thank you, Dr. Flores and trustees."
Thank you, Mr. Gerard. Up next is David Schmidt, and then after that will be Kimberly Cauldron. Yes, sir.
Good evening. You all look so serious, I think I need a joke to crack. President Chadwell and members of the board, I'm here this evening to address an area of great concern to me and other members of the community, letters. At a board workshop in May of 2017, a presentation was made by Mr. Mario De La Rosa. It was during this presentation the administration mentioned a letter from Police Chief Banks. That letter stated that the city wanted to end its long-term relationship with the school district and discontinue the SRO program, School Resource Officers. I have a copy of that undated letter. From the dais, the administration on many occasions has complimented commented on the great partnership they've enjoyed with both the city and the Williamson County Sheriff, and wish that that partnership could continue. One might ask, why can't it? Did the district ever reach out to Chief Banks and ask what they could do to make it possible to continue the relationship? Open records requests indicate no. In Chief Banks' letter, he offers to help the district create its own police department. There was no mention of the relationship with the sheriff's office. It was a foregone conclusion. Another police agency was the only solution. My answer then and today is if the city police chief does not want to protect our students, it is time for a new chief. The Round Rock District and this elected board have a great deal of influence with the city and city leadership. Open records indicate we sure spent a lot of money on the Round Rock Chamber. The district has an operating budget much larger than the city, and with $500 million in new bond money to spend, and much of it within the city limits, it's time to exercise some of that influence. But wait, continuing that relationship doesn't fit the agenda. Recently, a letter from the county judge and city mayor was made public. It was an attempt to take an option by the sheriff's office to continue the SRO program off the table. It shouldn't have been written. In a recent school board election, the trustees that voted in June of 2018 for a district police department were soundly defeated. I'm asking this board to step up to the plate and do your job. And back to that undated letter from Chief Banks. In open records requests to the city and county, I've seen memos and letters from Chief Banks. They're all dated. Why is it this letter that proposes to end a long-term relationship with the city the only one that's not? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Next is is Kimberly Cauldron, is that right? And then after that will be, our last one will be Heidi Goldman.
Good evening, Round Rock ISD Board Trustees and staff. This is my first time speaking here, so please forgive me. I am a parent of 2 young children at Pond Springs Elementary. I am a member of the Round Rock Dyslexia Group and several other special needs organizations. I come to the board because I have this really lofty dream that kids are educated based on their whole child, all their strengths, all their weaknesses, and everything. But I understand that due to budgetary constraints that that's not really possible. I do understand that decisions have to be made and budgets have to be drawn. And unfortunately, those are usually done based on diagnoses and based on medical diagnoses or labels. It's really sad that the district has compartmentalized the services that way as well, too. That my children started in the district at 3 years old with special education services for basically on a speech impairment, and then were later diagnosed with dyslexia. That was because I pursued it and I asked it, even though after 5 years of data, no one in the school thought of it. It's, sorry. As a parent who has to advocate for their kid because the school district doesn't look at these things as a whole picture, I think it's really important that the school district would publicly post some of the requirements of the state. The district improvement plan and dyslexia treatment programs as specified in State Education Code 11.252, classroom technology plan for students with dyslexia as specified in State Education Code 38.0031, dyslexia training opportunities, the aggregate number of students identified as having dyslexia in the district and by school, and copies of the screening letters that were used for kindergarten and first grades. If I'm going to have to be the one that's asking the school for these things and these questions, I think it's important that I should have access to that information of what's already planned and budgeted. And then I can look and see what if the school is going to stick with one reading program for all kids with dyslexia, even though they all have different strengths and weaknesses. Are they up to date on the 4th edition that came out last summer? How many teachers are certified in that program and available to teach to our children? Is the online learning program that they promote an Orton Gillingham scientifically based program? Even though these are things for children with dyslexia or students with dyslexia, they will benefit more than just that. They will benefit all students of different learning styles. And I would hope that the board could maybe take into consideration posting this information and opening it up for public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cauldron. We've reached the 20-minute mark. We got one more. Is that all right? Go ahead. All right. Heidi Goldman, is that right?
Yes. All right. Good evening. My name is Heidi Goldman. I'm a member of the Round Rock Dyslexia Group. You may be familiar with me by now. At this point, I've been coming to the school board meetings consistently since December. I've had the privilege to speak with a few of you personally, and I've sent you numerous emails, federal guidance letters, public information records, a whole list of suggestions for improvements on our dyslexia programs. After the last 6 months of school board meetings, I'm really starting to feel like a school board nerd. I honestly enjoy learning about all the great things that this district does and truly appreciate the huge scale and scope of what y'all do as board members, and I thank you. I think my favorite thing that you guys do is every time you get a fantastic report about student excellence in this district, you turn to the presenter and you say, but what more could we be doing, and what else could we try to do to bring these numbers up even higher? And that's what I relate to. That's what I've been trying to do for the kids with, in this district with dyslexia. There's always something that could be done better, and the spotlight is on dyslexia this year. We've had our federal investigation. We've had our corrective action plan. We've had updated guidance from the TEA. The feds are back this month following up. But there's really no response from this district that anything has changed. So I'll bring to your attention again just some inconsistencies with how Round Rock serves students with dyslexia, which does not meet updated guidance. We know dyslexia is a qualifying disability under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and also the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So the services provided to students with dyslexia just fall under these two ways, special ed or 504. Yet all students in Round Rock who have dyslexia, it's provided under RTI, Response to Intervention. The RTI program is overseen by the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, and then that next person up the chain is the Chief of Teaching and Learning. Yet the Executive Director of Special Education / 504 doesn't oversee dyslexia services at all, and it's just not part of the chain of command. The district completed their dyslexia screener, and which is great because now we know which kids are at risk for dyslexia before the end of first grade. Yet on the website, our Round Rock website, it states that campuses are just now required to monitor and intervene for these students identified at risk. This means more RTI, not the dyslexia program. So at risk for dyslexia does not translate into you've just identified a kid who might have a qualifying disability who now needs further evaluation for a diagnosis of dyslexia as mandated by child fine law. And the letter that went home to parents did not even have a box that you could check to say, we recommend a further dyslexia evaluation for dyslexia for your child. That wasn't even an option. So that's why our group keeps requesting meetings with the Innovation, Policy, and Budget Committee. I thought that might be a good fit.
Thank you.
Am I over?
Is that right?
Oh, well, you guys, thank you so much.
Is it
Appreciate
up
it.
there? Still shows it. Thank you. All right. We'll go to agenda item. Do we have Ms. Moore here? Do we want to move up? Oh, didn't even see you back there. Okay. Is that all right? We're going to go ahead and move up agenda item I-1, Safety and Security. And because she has done 2 evenings already this week, and there's going to be some comments. So I think you have a brief presentation. Is that right? We'll keep our comments brief for now, and then we have some comments on that as well. So after your presentation, we'll open it up to public comments.
I know many of you also have done several nights this week, so thank you. The last time that I was before you was at a special call meeting, and it was a discussion item with myself on the task force. And that evening, I believe that was May the 6th, that evening we did meet, and we met for about an hour, and then we came over here. And at that meeting, we pretty much organized our community engagement, or we kind of finished some organization of that community engagement, as well as we went over student survey. We did meet the following Monday as well, and at that time, it was a regular meeting for us. And at that time, I'm sorry, I have my dates wrong. The progress meeting that we had, and then the last regular meeting that we had was May the 6th. And we spent that time really doing a detailed effort for our community engagement because we wanted to be sure that we were very well organized. We wanted to be sure that that the process that we took was going to get as many people up to speak as possible, and the facilitation of that, and what we wanted to share with them. So that's what we spent that meeting doing. We also did talk about at that meeting that we were going to start to break into focus groups to develop our options. So then this last Monday and Tuesday, the 13th and the 14th, Monday evening, we had our first town hall meeting at Pearson Ranch Middle School. And so the task force, just so you obviously know, the task force, we've not been back together since those 2 community engagements. We have another meeting this coming Monday evening. So we've not been together, and so various members of that task force, I know were, everyone was taking notes and taking data. So this information here that I'm sharing with you is really high level. We've not done any cataloging. We intend to do that, of course, at our next meeting, and we'll have numbers about all kinds of things. However, this information basically comes from, our sign-in sheet. and from a couple of other task force members, I have gotten information, and again, this is unofficial. We'll know more after Monday. But I believe that on Monday night we had approximately 100 attendees, and on Tuesday night approximately 115. But what you have to keep in mind is that not everyone that was there spoke, right? And so from our sign-in sheets for speaking, and this information comes from the district. Again, we've not had time to look over any of our information or notes, but it seems that there were 54 unique speakers, and I believe that there were 7 that were repeated from Monday night and Tuesday night. The same 7 persons spoke Monday night and Tuesday night. We have got, let's see, and I think we had a few teachers to speak, and it was probably less than 5. They indicated that they were teachers in the district. We do also have, since Monday, that we publicized a safety task force email box, and we've received approximately 15 emails. Those are being forwarded out to all task force members as they are received into the box. We had surveys. The parent survey launched on Monday, and we were able to share that at the community engagement, letting everyone know that had come out, so to please look for that. And then also the student survey has launched, and you see up there the district has shared, as of this morning, the current responses that we have. 2,700 for parents and 1,700 for secondary students. Of course, we've not seen any of those surveys as of yet. Our next meeting is on Monday evening, and I imagine that we'll probably spend most of our time talking about the town hall meetings, and I don't even know if we'll get to see any of the survey information, but I can imagine that that's going to take probably quite a bit of our time. We need to also talk about, of course, the breakouts for the options and who wants to work on what option. I'm guessing that whoever is probably kind of passionate about a particular option would want to work on that. It might be good if we have someone who's not so passionate also working on one, so you really get a good mix of the both sides of the particular option to really build it out well. We don't have any date yet that we will be finished. Like I said, we still do have work to do, but we could not move forward without this community engagement. We feel like it went very well. We were very pleased with the turnout that we had, and I believe all of you were either there or you participated in watching on Facebook Live, so thank you for that. And so you saw and heard a lot of passion, a lot of input, a lot of recurring themes, it seems like, between the evenings for really important things. And so we can't wait to go back and digest that and turn that into some real important information and data for you that apply to the options.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Moore. We've got a couple questions. Mr. Math.
So first of all, thank you to you and the task force. A lot of great work, a lot of great dialogue. I don't want to stop that dialogue because it's great, but what I want to do is I want to start some dialogue up here. So how do we do that? And let me throw out an idea. I'm not asking you to wrap everything up by our June board meeting, but would it be feasible to give us a handoff of sorts with options and pros and cons, and then perhaps for the task force to continue to meet and maybe augment and supplement that presentation in the future, but in the same time allowing us to run in parallel by having some spirited dialogue from the dais.
Okay. So what you're asking is basically for us to give to you the options that we believe that we're going to build out?
Yes, with the pros and the cons.
Okay, but that's like really the whole meat of it all is the pros and the cons.
Perhaps a partial list of the pros and the cons, knowing that it's not complete. You see where I'm coming from. Is I just want to get conversations started up here because several of us have opinions and we want to talk amongst ourselves. And I've behaved, and restrain myself from entering into the dialogue, but I'd love to have that dialogue. I don't know how anyone else have an opinion.
We can discuss that in a minute, but I think that's fair. But can I go ahead and finish your question, and then we'll go down the.
Well, maybe my question is, how feasible is it to give us a handoff of sorts of what you have? When's our meeting? June 20th? What you have at June 20th, options, and perhaps it won't be a complete list of pros and cons, but the ones that have been identified up to that point to allow us to.
So you're asking for some partial work from us?
Well, I'm hoping that the partial work is maybe 80% of the way there and not 20% of the way there. But yes, I'm asking for uncompleted work, but substantial enough to start dialogue amongst ourselves. If you don't think you could do it, tell me, and we'll talk about that. But I have to ask the question.
Well, I think one of the things I'm not comfortable doing is making that decision for the whole task force. I think that's something that we should all be able to say that we're comfortable doing and what that would look like. And we have a meeting on Monday. So I think that, can we get back with you after Monday's meeting? Let you know. Because, 80% is a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ms. Gonzalez, and then Mr. Moses.
Thank you, Lisa, for all your hard work, and to all the task force. We do appreciate it. So I watched all of it online. I wasn't able to be there. One of the things that I'm a little bit concerned with is, are you getting a clear message as to the different choices that the task force has when it comes to safety and security of SROs being in the school? Is that clear from Round Rock PD? Is that clear from Williamson County as to what they're willing to offer as far as an SRO program?
Well, I think that when I was sitting in front of you last time, one of the things that I think that I asked you was that we not be limited in what our options are that we present to you, and that we would like to be able to present to you as many options as possible.
And that's why I'm asking, are those options clear to the task force? Because I hear we're getting feedback as well, and some of it is confusion from the community. They're asking us, well, what are our different options? Are we going to continue with an SRO program through Round Rock PD? Are we going to continue through Williamson County?
Well, that's something that you all will be deciding based upon the information that we turn over to you.
Right, but I'm trying to help the task force as well. I want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence, that we're communicating with the right people to get you where you need to be as a whole, not as just you, but as a task force. Because there seems to be a lot of confusion as to what y'all are doing from the community.
I'm not sure how to respond to that.
I'm just trying to fill in any blanks that you might have that we need to be doing.
Well, I think when I was here last time, I asked what you all were doing to push back on Wilco Sheriff's Office and to push back, I didn't say last time, but to push back possibly even on Round Rock, City of Round Rock. Because
so you're asking us to push back.
I asked you, what are y'all doing? Because there has been, and especially after the community engagement, there has been quite a, there was a lot, it was a recurring theme about Williamson County Sheriff's Office at our meetings. That was a high recurring theme.
Right, and that's what we're receiving too, is some confusion from the community as to what your options are.
Well, and what I'm referring to is there was a high recurring theme, it seemed, at the community engagement of people that spoke that they wish to continue to have Williamson County Sheriff's Office provide this student resource office services.
And is that what you get the feel that they'll do, that is an option for you after Judge Gravel spoke? I'm just curious. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible here.
As much as I understand from the task force and the work that we're doing, we will be presenting that as one of the options.
Okay. And I want to talk about the survey just a minute.
Okay.
I took mine. I already did mine. Are we sending that out to teachers? Is there going to be a survey for
So
teachers?
thank you. That's a follow-up piece. That's another item that we need to talk about at our meeting on Monday because we want to try to get something out to teachers before the school year is over. And so that is something that we are going to look at, yes.
Good, because I hope everybody hears that. I had a couple approach me saying, I think I'm important too.
Definitely.
Some of our teachers are not parents, so they've heard of the survey. So I just want to make sure that they're going to be able to participate in a safety and security survey because they're on campuses as well.
Definitely, and
Okay.
they are named in the title of what this task force is, right? For the safety and security of students.
Yeah, they're
and
just
teachers.
confused because they didn't get one yet. So I'm just doing some clarification. Thank you, Lisa.
We also have talked about I don't know how this will work. We have also talked about you've got a lot of stakeholders in this district called taxpayers who are not parents, who are not teachers, and how to get that input. That's a lot more input than probably teachers and students. So, and that's also
Have
an
we thought
important-
about that? How we could do that?
We're thinking about it. It's a difficult thing.
It is.
It's very difficult, but we want to find a way to make that happen, to make a survey available to them.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moses?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just real quick clarification, because I was going to comment on Mr. Mass' comment, but we're waiting on that discussion until after we've had public comment on this. I just want to make sure.
We can do both.
Okay.
You're talking about, go ahead.
I just want to make sure I comment on that. I'll make sure I'm doing whatever we're supposed to.
Sure.
Okay. But I'll come back to that in a second. Ms. Moore, just real quick, because I know we had a deadline that was proposed by trustees Weir and Math of May 13th to at least get a timeline. And we didn't get one that night, and that's fine. But you said you're going to bring us back one. Met again. You said y'all talk about it again. And now we're hearing again that there's still not a timeline. So what kind of guarantee can you give us that y'all's next meeting, when that's done, you can actually send an email to the full board saying, here's the timeline?
Well, if we discuss that in our next meeting, then there'd be other things that we don't talk about. So we'll have to make that a priority in our next meeting in order to be able to deliver that to you. Because what we have been doing for probably at least our last 3 meetings is preparing all of the community engagement, the surveys, and all the community engagement.
And we need that communication. We really do. And I think we all
Yeah, we can. I mean, we can't do the options without the community engagement.
But at the same time, I just look forward whenever we know, based on what we've heard from the city of Round Rock and from Williamson County, that there is an end date. And you start backing that end date up, and timelines are going to get compressed. And the last thing I want is for us to get as great as the options may be, and I believe they're going to be thoroughly fleshed out, but then limit our conversation time, because now we have to speed up the process to ensure that whatever's decided gets implemented appropriately. Make sure every I gets dotted, every T gets crossed. And then something gets dropped, the ball gets dropped over there because it's been rushed due to the length of this. So that's where I think, I don't want to speak Mr. Math, but kind of what he was.
Yeah, and again, I wanted to reiterate, I don't want to stop the great dialogue, and I want you to keep giving us information, but I wanted to be able to have us start to work in parallel.
Yeah, and I agree. We're at the point now where those type of things need to start happening.
We did share, and we need to rename them. We did share our non-negotiables with you, and there's a lot of things that could be happening with that. I know you're talking about budgeting here soon. All of those areas that are just the responsibility of the district, we said, are things that you can start acting on and looking at now.
Yeah. And then I have just one more question, because now y'all have been at this for 10 months. So in June, it'll be 10 months, from August all the way, the whole school year. And I know I've heard a few people have dropped out. I've heard from others that they're getting pretty fatigued and beaten down with this. What are we doing to try and keep people engaged, keep the morale up, make them feel like they're part of it? Because I am hearing from people on the task force that are, it's hitting summer months. They have stuff planned, family activities, and it's the point where they feel like they're ready to move forward, but the group isn't moving forward. So what are we doing to try and keep everybody engaged and a part of the task force?
You want to think about that one and we can come back in a minute? I mean, you can answer it now. I don't want to dismiss it by any means, but I just don't want you. If that all right? Can I let Ms. Weir? But I think that's a great point. Can I let go?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Don't forget it. So.
No.
Okay.
I was actually just curious as we were kind of talking timeline, how many meetings, I mean, your next meeting is Monday, but how many meetings have y'all scheduled prior to our June 20th meeting?
I mean, we're not. I mean, we're not. We have not. We need to talk about that because we had quite a few of our team missing the last time we were all together, and so we couldn't talk about that. You know, we couldn't talk about how much longer can we meet and who's available and who's not, and when. You know, what is this deadline looking like for us?
So, do you think when you get back together on Monday, I don't know. Do you get RSVPs? Because I mean, I know Nikki and I, when you did the new email list, we're actually not on it. So I was just
sorry about that. Okay,
it's fine. But so I don't.
We
know
do
if
try
we're
to
getting
understand who's going to be
RSVPs and you
available.
have
Yes,
some
we do.
idea.
We do try to understand who's going to be there, and we were aware that we were going to have a lot of missing members last time. We still did a lot of. We still worked and we talked about things we needed to talk about, but once again, we did not have a full group there to really say, okay, this is a date that we're going to try to commit to, and how many more meetings do we feel like we need that we can start mapping this out.
Does the 20th
That we meet this
looks
coming
better?
Monday.
Does it look better for attendance so that you could maybe have that
I'm
opportunity
hopeful.
to discuss?
It's a regularly scheduled meeting for us.
Okay. So I just had one question on the secondary students. Is it middle and high school or just high school? Is it both that are doing the survey? Middle and high school. And then I just kind of had a comment about the confusion because I don't want it to be that the task force is confused. If the public is confused, that's kind of on us and maybe on the administration that they don't understand what our current SRO program is. I mean, that some of the letters that we're getting, it's very clear that people don't understand what's in place right now versus some of the things that y'all are talking about. So I think there's some historic information that maybe on the confusion side can come from this end to try to clear some of that up of what we have now, what we're comfortable giving out, so that people kind of understand what our program is.
But it's more than just what we currently have. It's a clear exit date for Round Rock PD. We can explain what we have now, but we also need to explain what we've been talking about for over a year when Round Rock PD said they would no longer cover us.
Right, but I'm even talking more general than that because there are people that think, it's 60 officers and elementary schools. There's a wide variance of some of the comments that we've gotten and that I've gotten personally. So I think just what we're looking at, no matter what option we choose, it's not out there. It's not clear. Sort of what our goals are for the SRO program. And I think we could do a better job, and maybe Dr. Flores and the staff could think about maybe how we could better explain to people really what it is.
Yeah, I welcome that clarity. I really do. I think we need to get to some points of clarity because I do think that if we begin with the end in mind, we're going to wake up and it's July the 1st of 2021. And what we do know, there was a letter from Chief Banks in 2017, in March, and in April. So we can go through the chronology. The thing that I would be very cautious about, if we send information that we say this is what we currently do, we're not asked yet. Now, if administration is saying what would a transition plan look like, what would that mean? There were some presentations made earlier. We've stayed away from that, and I've told staff, stay away from that because the appearance and the doubt, because I can tell you for 2 days, there were a lot of assumptions being made on a lot of wrong information. And so with that, I think the task force is doing the work that they're going to continue receiving. At some point, if the task force says, what would that look like? We can go back to when we stopped, make that presentation. I don't remember what date. I've told staff, stay away from that, let the work, and don't interfere, or don't even give the appearance of interference. But I will say this, at some point, and I need this on record, that on June or July the 1st of 2021, I hope that whatever plan is out there, that there's a plan we can all defend. Because I can tell you we do have gaps in coverage right now, that it's really not July 1st of 2021. The real question is in August of 2019, will those gaps be addressed? So that, to my, I want to make sure that everybody understands that our job is to try to make as safe an environment as possible. But at the same time, if we over-communicate this, people will say, oh, you've already made this decision. There's people speaking tonight saying this letter came up from so-and-so. Ask the city. Ask the chief. So I would say this. Give them the time they need, recommendations, options. But the real truth of the matter is the facts are the facts. And right now, Judge Gravel has a letter that says it's concurrent with with Mayor Morgan. And if there's something different, if Sheriff Chody says, oh my goodness, we can do this, you know what? I would say it would solve all of us a lot of work, pain, and other misunderstanding. And it's correct. I've said it over and over. I've said that if the sheriff's office could continue to do the work, then guess what? It'd be amazing. However, we've got to do, and I as the superintendent am entrusted to make sure that we have a plan. And so, Ms. Weir, I agree. Can we be more clear? We should be. However, if we're clear, then people read in, oh, they've already decided. So right now, let the process work, but I do know the clock is running, and we need to come to some understanding that we've got to come to some solutions here.
Okay, we have some speakers here. Mr. Moses, do you want to follow up? Okay, I want to.
Yeah, let them go, and then I'll.
Okay, and I do have a couple of comments real quick. The survey, I would like for it to go out, find a way to go out to the community because everybody will be involved. So I think we have 100,000 emails, and that goes to taxpayers and everything. So there's a way to add that, and you can trim it down if you want, whatever. But if you can do that. Also, there was topics about cost. I heard that mentioned several times. That we gave you direction not to consider cost. I don't remember us specifically saying that. So I just don't want it to. I think the general impression was don't get stuck on that. But it is becoming a factor. So
definitely, that was another big recurring theme.
How much is it? What's the cost difference? And not only the initial startup cost, but the ongoing cost on that. And the third one was, and I'll take this upon myself, we did have a discussion about meeting with Sheriff Chody, and I talked to you and I talked to a couple of the trustees about setting up a meeting, and then that was last week, and then this week the 2 meetings, so I've just now made a request and waiting to hear back from him. But I'd like to at least meet with him and then let him tell us yes or no. That is an option. And, of course, you all, that will be a factor in what you use going forward, your recommendation. So, anyway, with that, we have 5 speakers on this agenda. Can we go to those? And then we can finish up. So, again, 3 minutes for everybody here. The same rules applied, courteous and respectful. No mention of staff or employee names or board members, but otherwise. Mr. Sprigg first, and then next will be Esmeralda Rubaclava Hernandez. So, thank you.
Good evening, President Chadwell, trustees, and Dr. Flores. I'd like to start off by thanking the task force for all of the work and effort they've put into this, the fact that they're trying to be very thorough and looking at this from a comprehensive standpoint. I was also privileged to attend both of the town hall meetings earlier this week. I have spoken on multiple occasions to express the view that if there is to be a police presence in schools, that I strongly believe that the Williamson County Sheriff's Office is a much better solution than establishing a district police department. I am one of 134 people as of this evening who have signed a petition to that effect, which will be delivered to the trustees in the near future. At the town hall meetings this week, I urged the task force to disregard the April 25th letter from Judge Gravel and Mayor Morgan because I view it as an attempt to mislead the public by making it appear that the sheriff's office is no longer an option. If the Board of Trustees votes to continue the relationship with the sheriff's office rather than form a district PD, I believe Judge Gravel will change his tune. He and the county commissioners will not abandon the students of Round Rock ISD. The task force and this board should not be swayed by the April 25th letter or Judge Gravel's expressions of his personal preference. The Wilco Sheriff's Office is superior to a district PD in every way that matters. The Sheriff's Office has extensive capabilities and a long track record of serving the best interests of students, parents, and taxpayers. There may be room for improvement, but at least we know what we're getting with the Sheriff's Office. In contrast, the capabilities and performance of a district police department are nothing more than speculation at this point, perhaps even wishful thinking. That may be why only 15% of the speakers at the town halls expressed support for creating a district PD. On previous occasions, I've outlined the unintended negative consequences of a district PD, but tonight I'm going to focus on two more potential problems. First, the challenges of operating a district PD will come at a time when the district's administration and board of trustees have their hands full with educating students. From what I've observed, this board is already overburdened and doesn't need additional headaches from trying to establish and operate a district PD. The focus should be on educating students and leaving law enforcement to the professionals. Second, I'm concerned that in the wrong hands, a district PD could be used to intimidate students, parents, staff, community members, and perhaps even trustees. That's a risk I don't think we should take.
Thank you, Mr. Sprigg. Thank you. Next up is Mr. Hernandez, and then after that will be Leah Nolan.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here. As you said, you all listened to the meeting at Piercing Ranch Middle School and at Cedar Ridge, and I want to ask if you all did why there's no ASL or language interpreters here tonight, and why that's something that has been consistently lacking in Round Rock ISD events. So firstly, I'm going to start off with a snippet from the ACLU's 2019 report, Cops and No Counselors, and I'm going to have quotes from this report peppered throughout. In the wake of high-profile school shootings, many schools over the past decade have invested scarce educational funds into putting more police in schools. School districts have shown a near obsession with hardening schools despite federal data revealing that the real crisis of schools isn't violence, but a broad failure to hire enough support staff to serve students' mental health needs. Schools with such services see improved attendance rates, better academic achievement, and higher graduation rates, as well as lower rates of suspension, expulsion, and other disciplinary incidents. Data shows that the presence of school-based mental health providers not only improves outcomes for students, but can also improve overall school safety. So this basically boils down to hire more social workers, LPCs, and other mental health professionals. I was aghast to learn this year that Round Rock ISD doesn't employ a single social worker, and I'm very curious as to why that is. There are students at the elementary school level who very clearly would benefit from a school social worker being around. There are elementary school children being put into ISS, children with disabilities not being addressed, and just overall a lack from elementary school all the way to high school. So we know that school shootings are a reality, but so is the fact that 1 in 5 youth will develop mental health difficulties, eventually warranting a diagnosis, and 1 in 10 youth will be affected by their mental health needs enough to require additional support services from schools. It's not just about school shootings, and again, they are a reality, but hiring SROs is just a Band-Aid to cover a gaping wound, and it's a much bigger problem than just hiring law enforcement in schools. And the data shows me that my 2 brown children are not safe in school with its own police force. We moved to Round Rock and bought a house in RISD because of the great education from which my children would benefit. This is all going to be in vain if they fear going to school. No child should have to be afraid to go to school, but that's the reality for many children of color, children with disabilities, children who are LGBTQIA+. So please hire some social workers, hire some LPCs. We need more of those. We don't need more police in schools, and we just definitely need to hire more social workers. We're failing our kids, both by not having mental health professionals and by not having those interpreters here at every meeting and every Round Rock ISD event from here on out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Up next will be Leah Nolan, and after that will be Adam McCormick.
New glasses, excuse me. Good afternoon, night at this point. I'm Leah Nolan. I am also a task force member. Have been since the inception, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the task force. I'm speaking for myself. Thank you for the opportunity to serve on that task force. I, for one, am committed to seeing this through to the very end. I am grateful that the community had the opportunity to come out and voice their concerns. And I, for one, will say that I am committed to listening to every single thing that was said and reviewing every single email that has been sent, but also recognizing time is of the essence. Not because we have to be pushed to hurry up and make a decision, but we do need to effectively come to an end. You can talk things to death, and there are valid points for and against any option that we can come up with. But rest assured, with this particular member, I will commit to being as open-minded as possible, but I'm, for one, pushing that we can have something to you guys by this very next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nolan. Up next is Mr. McCormick, and after that will be Patrick Simmons.
Good evening. Thank you for having this forum. My name is Adam McCormick. I'm on the social work faculty at St. Edward's University and a member of the National Association of Social Workers, but most importantly, the parent of 5 children in Round Rock ISD schools. And it's my hope to draw your attention to, as you make some of these major decisions about school safety and school security, to some of the unintended consequences of having a heavy police force in schools, specifically the ways in which having school resource officers and police officers on campus disproportionately impacts some of the district's most marginalized and most vulnerable students, specifically students of color, LGBTQ students, students with disabilities, and students who have experienced complex trauma and adversities, things like physical abuse and sexual abuse and domestic violence and other adversities. When we look just at, I could cite research all day long, a Department of Ed study out of the Office of Civil Rights. Black children in schools with student resource officers were 5 times as likely to be arrested in school than those in schools without student resource officers, 3.5 times as likely to be expelled and suspended. Black female students making up 50% of all female students who are arrested in schools where there are student resource officers, a rate that nearly doubles that of schools where there aren't officers present. And similar data when we look at LGBTQ students, when we look at students with disabilities, students with complex trauma. So it's my hope that the board will, as you make these major decisions, and I certainly recognize the complexity of making decisions about safety and security in 2019, given everything that's going on, especially with mass shootings, it's my hope that you will keep in mind the experiences of some of the most marginalized and some of the most vulnerable students in the district. And some might argue that you have to make some of those compromises to ensure the safety given everything that's going on in 2019. But the reality is that when you look at some of these really high-profile mass shootings, one of the universal themes that we see is these have occurred in schools where there is a much larger presence of security personnel than mental health personnel. And I think the previous speaker said it so well that the answer or a big piece of the solution is to increase the mental health professionals in schools, especially school social workers, because school social workers can do just that. They can help to identify those students who are in crisis, those students who might be suicidal or depressed or even homicidal or psychotic, and intervene and do something to prevent this. And you can't really address a problem without going directly at its core. And I think in looking at the mental health experiences of our students and using some of the resources that the district has to enhance the number of social workers and mental health professionals, we can address the safety concerns while not compromising on the inclusion of students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. And then our last speaker is Patrick Simmons.
Thank you. President Chadwell, board members, Dr. Flores. I'm Patrick Simmons, president of Education Round Rock. The teachers and support Personnel Union. I'm not here to talk about salaries, even though our personnel in Round Rock are overworked and underpaid, because I know you're addressing that issue even more compassionately than you have in the past. I'm here today to talk a little bit about safety and security of our Round Rock ISD family, our students, our teachers, our support personnel, and our families. We live in a different time when we must prepare for every happening and exceptional situations. In the military, we modeled a 6P scenario. I'm only going to talk about 5 of them, and that is proper planning prevents poor performance. But another part of the process is that a decision must be made. You have been given the data that all of the present law enforcement personnel will be pulled out of our Round Rock ISD in 2021. We have a responsibility to ensure we are not scrambling at the last minute to provide for the security and safety of our folks. We will be able to provide an input to the training to better handle and deal with our kids once the police officers have had their basic training. You can't continue to wait on making the decision. It has to be made. I know that if we had more counselors, if we had more support personnel, that we could prevent various situations. But we have various situations and violent situations too often now. And a police presence is necessary to thwart those actions. So let's get on board so that we can have a smooth transition from our present police force system to a Round Rock ISD police team whose responsibility will only be in our interest for our schools and our safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. All right, so that's our public comments. We have a couple more up here, and then we can try to wrap this up. This is much more extensive than I thought, but that's all right. So, Mr. Moses, did you want to follow up on?
Yeah, just real. Sure. I'll be real quick. And I want to say, I think we all know, and we heard it last two night or Monday, Tuesday night. Heard it again tonight. This has got to be an air lane to sea approach. It's got to be some type of security, in my opinion. Also, mental health. It's got to be working with counselors. It's got to be engaging community. It's got to be. It's not going to be a one-trick pony. It's got to be a multifaceted approach, and I think we all acknowledge that. And I think tonight we're going to see a good presentation from the SHAC on some things we're doing to improve in our mental health services. But I guess my question, though, Lisa, is just final one. And this is just. I know there's a lot of options being considered, but it's one of the options, and I'll explain why I'm asking this in just a second. Is one of the options still being considered no SROs on our campuses?
I believe so.
Okay. Then, Board, I think in line with Mr. Mass' comments earlier about trying to at least begin the work of going parallel, would we reach some type of consensus that they will continue their work and they're going to get us the work that they get done, but would it be appropriate to ask Chad, whenever you talk with Sheriff Chody, to ask him what an implementation plan would look like should he take it over? Had Dr. Flores and his team look at what an implementation plan would be like with a district PD, and if we had no SROs, well, then what type of burden would be passed on to our campus principals and counselors there? And that way, when we get the options from the task force, we have an actual plan for all the different scenarios. So I know that was one of the things that was brought up from speakers last Monday, Tuesday night. And they're fair questions. It's, what is the cost? How's it going to be implemented? Who's going to be the hiring? How many are we going to hire? And those are very, very fair questions. So I would say, while you're still working, let's go ahead and allow the sheriff's office, if they'll give us that information, let's go ahead and let staff give us those, if we can get that information as well. So when we have our conversation start, we're at least starting from a place that's further along than from a blank piece of paper.
Yeah. Okay, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, Dr. Press, I'm going to defer to you on this because I do think we've had a presentation. I'm leery in having anything that would be something that people say this is the recommendation from administration.
And I don't think
So-
we're looking for any recommendation.
but I
It's
do
just
think-
what is a plan?
Yeah, but
what is
what-
for all those three different out?
I think
possible
we've
scenarios?
had a presentation before where at least what would be the basic coverage. If we can find that, we can make that. I mean, it's something that has
Yeah,
been
I would want to update that.
board
We have
document.
presented to the board sort of a cost analysis and a phase-in approach because Chief Banks and Sheriff Chody, when they originally said, they would cease at some point to provide services, they both vowed, we'll work with you in transition. So we can bring that back. We probably need to refresh everything and make sure everything's updated as far as, I don't know if you're talking necessarily about a cost, but just a plan to phase in.
Exactly. What would it be?
In whichever direction we were to go.
Right.
And there's even a phase-in component as well. If the sheriff's department were to take everything completely, how does that look between the county and the city?
And hopefully between now and then, Sheriff Chody will meet with us and can give us some answers.
Yeah, and we're still seeking solutions as well because if we look primarily at middle schools and high schools, as all of you know, we have one middle school, Canyon Vista, that's in Travis County in the city of Austin, out of the jurisdiction of the sheriff's department, and obviously not in the city of Round Rock. So that's one kind of outlying campus. But we can put that together for you and bring it back.
And I think also, since we've heard that no SROs is still an option that's on the table for the task force, it's what are they currently doing that would then need to be handed off to campus principals, counselors, teachers, et cetera.
Yeah, we can find school districts, comparable school districts that don't have SROs at all and how they handle that. We can get that as well. So.
Can I just
right.
make the suggestion that maybe we wait until Tuesday to start that, and so we don't sort of take things away right now
Yeah,
from the
not
task
taking
force.
away, yeah.
Because if you're on Monday, you're going to break into your groups. You'll have a better idea of what your groups are actually working on, and then if we know if they've defined what their 3 groups are, 4 groups, or 5 groups, then I think that gives staff a better idea.
If they come
of where
back
to
and
go.
there's other options besides those 3, then
Right, and so
add,
we can
add
work on
them to the
all of them.
list.
So I'm just saying maybe we can wait till Tuesday.
Yeah.
All right, let's try to wrap this up
But
because
is
we could talk
everybody-
about
do we
this.
have consensus to let them start working on that?
Yeah,
Well, I think letting them start working on it is fine. It doesn't mean that we're asking the turnaround for you to come and present us something until the task force is done.
But have it
Okay.
in the there we go.
All right,
Begin
you done?
working is good.
Okay. All right, so let me, real quick, any other comments real quick? I just want to say, I'll wrap. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is real quick because I want to make sure we're clear. I want to be clear that what we're doing, I think, and I like Amy Weir's suggestion that anything that we can do, like, for example, back to, I went to Patty to say, when did we make that presentation? There's a presentation there somewhere. That is something we can look at with our new safety director, Mr. Jeff Yarbrough. On Tuesday, he can look at that and say where this can be adjusted with, if there's some cost analysis that he could. But I don't want to do anything till after that's an option presented to the board, Ms. Moore. To the task force on Monday, say this is what we're willing to do. This is what has been presented at, and we'll even, the date or whenever that was, and that as soon as if you guys are okay with that, then we can have our safety director to look at that and say, here's some adjustments, because I don't want to create anything different until you guys start providing some options.
All right. So with that, I say thank you for your presentation. I know I talked to you yesterday. I said, keep it short. You did 2 slides, commended, and I see you uploaded it this afternoon.
Wait,
so
are you
amazing.
okay with that? Us waiting till Tuesday, and do you think you'd be able to do that on Monday at your meeting on Monday?
Looks like we have to.
Okay.
I hope that you're leaving here encouraged that we're supportive of your work. We want to hear the results. We want to include the non-negotiables or whatever term you want to use for those. And as everyone's aware, it's such a complex issue, and these options are as different as night and day, from an independent police department to no police whatsoever. And so to incorporate those non-negotiables, as someone who spends their day job in mental health, the importance of mental health is paramount. But all 3 of those options are really different strategies of how we would incorporate mental health in those resources that we have in the school. So I hope that you are leaving here, and I hope the task force is encouraged by the questions and the feedback that we are ready to get going. And so I hope that that's the message that you received tonight.
And I'm making hopefully the last final comment. You're doing a great job. The town halls were phenomenal. I was glad to see so many comments. Everybody was civil. There were a few that ran on a little bit, but the impassion, it was great. This is what I was there for both of them. It was fun to hear the enthusiasm for and against and all the different viewpoints they brought. So, and I know it was a lot of work to put all that together. So kudos to you, to all the people with the microphones. I know there was a glitch at one point with those, but you got to working. So all of that was great, and keep going and bring us what you can. But if you need something from us, please reach out to me, reach out to the board and say, I need more help. If you need better snacks, you want pizza, you want a sandwich, Dr. Flores, if that means you get more people to show up again, that's always an issue. And then, again, like I said, the comments were great, and I think it was timely that the Cedar Valley, as much as that it was a crisis, it worked out well. We saw what could happen in a response. So again, compliments to the Wilco Sheriff and the administration for reaching out and coordinating all of that. So I'm glad there was nothing to that. But anyway, carry on and good luck, and reach out to us if I can do anything.
I did want to address Trustee Moses and your question and your concern. So the people that we have at the table right now on this task force, they're all dedicated. They're in it. I mean, at this point, they're in it. And the folks that have been in it, it's been started off with a 35-person group, I believe. And, we were maybe dropped to a 20-person group for, we lost quite a few just in the first 3 meetings. There's some people that have never even attended. Okay? So we've been, about a 15 to 18, 19 group since December. Not everybody can come every time. People have lives. They have children. They have work. They have other commitments. But this group is dedicated, and they're there. We have difficult discussions. There's a lot to talk about. And so, I don't know how to keep people engaged. The people that are coming and here, they're engaged. They are at this point. Are they getting weary? They might be. This is hard work. It's not for the weary. But they're returning back to the meeting, when they can come back to the meeting, and we're working hard.
Thank you very much for bringing that back around, because I kind of even forgot I'd asked that question.
Okay.
So
right.
Thank you very much for your answer. Appreciate it.
All right, Ms. Moore, leave while you can. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you. All right. Now we have, let's go through the superintendent's reports. Yeah, we've got a couple of things that are going to be kind of extensive. Can we go through at least one or two? And if we need to take a break, we can. But is that all right? We'll go through one or two. Superintendent's report, Dr. Flores, H1. Check. What's that?
We talked about doing the things that we have action items before it got too late. I know that we always are trying to be respectful of our staff, but I don't know how everybody feels. It's already 9 o'clock.
We can. I know that the monthly financials may affect that, so maybe we can move that one first. Is that, and then we go to action items, and then we'll do the SHAC and the STAR results afterwards. You want to do that? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Aguilera?
The SHAC are here as well, though.
Yeah,
SHAC members are here as well. Let's not forget about them.
Okay. So,
we'll just
let's go.
We'll
all right,
let's
go ahead and do this. We'll go in the order we
decisions.
have here, and we'll just try to go through quick. So, all right. So, Dr. Flores.
Yes, we have 3 superintendent's report this month. The first one is the Student Health Advisory Council, and Mandy Estes will lead us through that with Monica Faulkner, Dr. Holly Garza, and Michelle Andrews. So, without further ado, Ms. Estes.
Good evening, President Chadwell, trustees, and Dr. Flores. We do have Dr. Monica Faulkner and Dr. Holly Hughes Garza here this evening. Michelle Andrew was not able to be here. They are our executive board of the SHAC. And I won't belabor this, but I do want to commend the SHAC this year. They have done fantastic work. The members of the SHAC don't always agree, but they come to a resolution, and they are really moving us forward. And I'm especially proud of, and Monica knows what I'm going to talk about here, they sponsored our suicide prevention walk. And so partnering with the district on something that's so important, it was a wonderful Saturday, and really appreciate their efforts on that. So with that, I will turn it over to the lovely ladies from our SHAC. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Monica Faulkner, and with me is Dr. Holly Garza, who's serving as the vice chair of SHAC, and I am serving as the chair. I think this was my 6th year. I'm not quite sure. I lost count somewhere. And I do have a PowerPoint, but I'm just going to keep talking. So the Shack had asked when I present if I could just kind of refresh everybody's memory about what the Shack does and our purpose and kind of how we are functioning as the Round Rock ISD Shack. So the state requires within the education code that there be a local health advisory council in every school district. And the education code requires district to just consider the recommendations of that advisory council before changing health instruction or curriculum. And the Shack be comprised of a minimum of 5 members, the majority of which are parents. I would say in Round Rock, we have a lot of people who are willing to serve on the Shack. I think we should be, as a community, really proud of what we've done, because I've heard from other school districts who are like, we're begging people to come, and we have so many people who want to be involved. So we have very strong bylaws that were developed several years ago that allow for a 3-year appointment of a Shack member that the board appoints. We have 3 elected officers, chair, vice chair, and secretary. And then we have 3 committees. So we've kind of narrowed our work down into committees, and that's where the bulk of our work gets done. So our mental and behavioral health committee kind of combines substance use and mental health concerns into one committee. We have a wellness committee that looks at physical education, health, anything related to food issues. And then our human development and sexuality committee looks at the sexual health curriculum. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw all the people who have put in time this year. And also, one of the things that the Shack wanted me to be sure to convey is to thank you for your thoughtful appointments of folks, and to also encourage you to reach out to those you've appointed, have a conversation, talk to them about what your concerns are, so that we have some communication with the board, because we're never quite sure how everything's fitting together. We would also love your help with increasing the diversity of the Shack. We feel like right now we are very much lacking in diversity in terms of race, ethnicity, and gender, and so we would love that. We would also love to make sure that when people are appointed that they understand the commitment. It's not a great commitment. I mean, we're asking them to attend 6 to 8 meetings a year, and they run pretty efficiently. But we did have quite a few people drop off this year, and we had a lot of vacancies. So we want to make sure that we just keep that in mind going forward. So our Shack this year focused primarily on mental and behavioral health. Last year we came to you with recommendations to increase the social and emotional learning coordinator resources, and then to create kind of a long-term plan for in-school mental health clinics. And I'm really excited to say that those things are in motion, they're in progress. We love hearing about everything that's happening. So we spent a lot of time this year talking with counselors from high school, middle school, and elementary school levels, as well as the district staff, to kind of see what was going on and where else we could look at for recommendations. We did sponsor the suicide prevention walk, and we had a lot of presentations about social emotional learning, trauma-informed schools, and really discussed with counseling services that in-school mental health clinic. So our takeaways from all of those discussions were that we really need to pay attention to adverse childhood experiences, how that impacts learning. I'm kind of a nerd on this topic, and the neuroscience is actually really fascinating. So if you ever want just a one-on-one presentation, I will be happy to do that for you. But kids can't learn when they're in a state of fear, and we have kids who have experienced trauma, and they're in classrooms and they're not learning, and that's when discipline issues arise. We also have an issue with suicide, and just in general, nationally, suicide is the leading cause of death among those 12 to 17 years old. 80% of mental health issues begin in childhood, and all of these issues come with the challenge of trying to figure out how to get mental and behavioral health care, because there's never enough resources. Kids who are able to go to therapy miss school, and so that was one of the things we were really looking at this year. And there have been successful models in other districts on how to provide those services in school. So one of the things we wanted to also show you is our ratio of counselors to students. So the recommendation from the American School Counselor Association is 1 counselor to 250 students. The data I have is a year old now because at the beginning of the year we get the data from last year. But you can see that our ratio, we're only meeting that ratio in 2 of our very targeted high schools. So there's some room to grow here, right? And then when we talked to the counselors, when the SHAC had a really long meeting with counselors from all levels, we definitely heard that there was a need for more because what they were doing was more academic, and what they really wanted to do or needed help doing is some of the case management. And we've heard already tonight about social workers in schools, and there's a model in other school districts to have those social workers in school. And so we heard from counselors about how that was a need that they would like addressed as well. And so just to clarify with that, because I am a social work professor, I'm very biased here, but so social workers can do 2 things. They can provide the therapy, but they can also provide the case management. So when a student graduates from my program, they're able to provide that case management, which is not to say that they're working intensively with the family, but they're able to figure out, okay, grandma's raising this kid now. We need to interface with grandma and get her some services so this kid shows up to school on time, so this kid has what they need. But they're also able to do the therapy, both in individual and group settings. And so it's critical, I think, to keep that in mind. So when we're talking about counselors, we're talking about academic counseling primarily, and then a smaller amount of time for really like in-depth mental health work. So our recommendation, to keep it short here, is to continue to work on establishing mental health centers, and our recommendation is broad. We want 1 at each learning community. And the mental health centers would provide students who are targeted, so students who are identified as having a need for the service, with services within the school. So they would be layered, integrated with existing counseling services. We would want to make sure that everything that's done with those are consistent with the Safety and Security Task Force. And we see this as very critically important for our schools. So with mental health centers and in-school mental health centers, we're not talking about facility, right? We're talking about a therapist who's contracted with externally who can come into a school on a certain day, right? So we're not asking that anything be built. It's more an issue with just contracting with an external entity to come in and provide those services. Our understanding is that the counseling department is already looking at that, and so we ask that you just support their efforts and help make sure that that becomes a reality for our students. The benefit to that is that kids stop missing class, because a therapy session requires not just a kid to miss class, but a parent to miss work. So that parent's got to pick up that kid, drive them back. And that kid is missing at a minimum 3 hours of class time. So as someone who worked with foster youth, and we had to do that frequently, it was really detrimental to learning for kids. So if we have something in the school that they can utilize, it will work a lot better. Our second recommendation is just to ask the learning communities to create wellness coalitions if something like this doesn't already exist, because some are already doing things along this line, that bring parents, students, teachers, everybody together to create a sense of the importance of mental health and how we need to be able to talk about it, and we need to be able to reach out for help. So essentially destigmatizing help-seeking behavior. So with those coalitions, we would hope that there would be a lot of community input, help identifying community resources that families can use, and meeting the unique needs of that community. So I'm going to stop there, but I will say that in the next year, I think the SHAC, kind of our last conversations were really about why don't we have social workers in schools? So I see that as the direction the SHAC is going next year. So thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Weir.
Actually, that was what I was going to ask, where you thought you were going, and if you've talked about it, that's great. So then I'm just curious if you could have, if the SHAC had a wish list of what you would really like.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it would be much more than this, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess what are some of the things that are on the horizon? Because it is something we've been talking about, and it is something that's coming from multiple directions.
It is, yeah.
And we did leave a line item, in our last budget talks for mental health. And so I guess I'm just curious.
So I would say, and this, the Shack just started those conversations, so this is probably more of my representation, not everybody. But I think you have to look at, and one of the things that I started asking some questions about is why don't we have communities in schools in Round Rock ISD the way that they have it in AISD, and it's embedded in their schools. So they've got social workers in their schools who can figure out, there's a group of kids who who have issues around grief and loss, so let's create a group for those kids. I did a field placement at CIS, so I ran some of those groups, so I get how it works. But then they also have the social workers there who can say, something's off with this family right now, and what can we do to get them the resources that they need? So I think that's a bigger question that we're starting to ask is why don't we already have this? Because it's pretty obvious of a need, and our counselors told us that. The on-the-ground level counselors said, I don't have time for the case management. I've heard it from principals too of, I don't have time to be finding someone a place to live, and making sure that they can get to where they need to be.
And so one of the terms that's been kind of thrown out that I've heard is crisis counselors versus academic, and then there's social workers. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking about models that other school districts have. Do they do crisis counselors and social workers, or is it mostly just social work?
There's no so crisis counselor isn't like a licensure. It's I think people are just talking about a type of crisis, type of counseling. So social workers would be doing that crisis counseling as needed. The academic counseling, I think, is very different, and that's what we see represented in our schools now. But I would also think about it in terms of, I would encourage y'all to think about mental health broader than just therapy, because I think a lot of the research, a lot of the neuroscience tells us that kids don't necessarily need an hour of therapy a week. What they need are small touch points from caring adults. They need to rebuild relationships with adults so that they heal. And so a lot of that can come from somebody who's embedded in the school who just has that positive relationship with that kid too. So it's broader. We need the therapy. We need the really targeted services, but we also need some universal services.
And that would be more of a social worker,
Yes.
really is what you're saying.
Okay. We've got a couple more questions here, but they're important. I don't know who pushed it first, but Ms. Feller, all right.
So you're speaking my love language as
Yeah.
someone who spends their day in the mental health community, and I'm a licensed professional counselor. Mental health is paramount that we address our kids, making sure they're getting serviced. I have a couple of questions just for clarification. On your second, the slide with the ratio of counselor to students, these are our academic advisor counselors that you're referring to here, correct?
So I'll tell you, I have the breakdown. There are some school psychologists in there and just counselors, so it's a mix. But when we talk to counselors who were doing academic advising, they were saying, yes, that's a part of what I do, but if I have a suicidal child, then that's also a part of what I do. And to me, that seems like it's a huge task. It's monumental to be able to have the skills to do both of those. And I don't think it's necessarily fair.
And the ability to get out of your office and
Yes.
find these children and their children, even until seniors in high school, they're still kids, and identify the ones that need, and the ability for them to just show up in your office sometimes that's a hard thing for kids to do, is to reach out and ask for help. And some don't even know what to ask for.
Right.
So I just think that that's really important. And another thing that's important for us to remember up on the dais is our counselors have to spend 3 years teaching before they can get into a counselor role. So they kind of get out of that counselor and therapy world for a few years while they're teaching before they can get into the counselor world. So I think it's important to know that we need that ground movement of people that are going to be establishing relationships. Following up with your recommendations, have you done any investigations, like with the local MHMRs and bringing them in? I know you talked about if a student leaving school, that's almost 3 hours that they're going to miss some class time, and if they're embedded, would the ideal for SHAC to have these therapy sessions or these social workers meet with kids before or after school, or just miss less time out of school?
Miss less time. I think they would. I remember pulling kids out of class, but it was really targeted around when was the best opportunity to do that. But to answer your other question, are you going to answer it?
So the group that's been exploring options is looking at some, as Monica said, contracting out with an agency and perhaps having that person travel within the learning community to where the need is, depending on the kids. And as she said, we're not really considering facilities because that would add a whole other wrinkle in it. But we see that as a best option right now, and that will necessitate that we go for an RFP, and that's kind of where we are in the process.
And just one last thing is I would love to see us arm our teachers with the ability not to be therapists and not to be diagnosticians, but the ability to identify a kid who has changed, or and to be able to even ask. There's a wonderful program called Mental Health First Aid that teachers can go through, and to just be able to ask, are you thinking of killing yourself? And not be scared to ask it because you don't know what to do if the answer is yes. And, so I think arming our teachers who see these kids day in and day out, the kid who's the class clown for 6 months of the year and then comes in with a hood over their head, they're the first line of defense for these kiddos. So I would love to see some kind of initiative where we're arming our teachers.
And I think there's legislation that's probably going to get through that's going to require us to all do that. So
Thank you. Thank you for your work.
Mr. Moses.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you very much for this presentation. You kind of touched on a little bit I want to talk about back on slide 5, and this is just part of this is my own education. So all those counselors listed, they have training in mental health, or that they just strictly just more academic, and now they've kind of fallen into that role as well?
That's a great question. I don't know the background of all the counselors. I think that's something that we can ask for and dig into.
Yeah, because it's always been kind of a sticking point with me with the word counselor. Whenever I'm like, is this really a counselor or an academic advisor?
Yeah.
Because my academic advisor in college, I wouldn't go talk to them if I had a problem with something else.
Right.
So I want to. That's always a distinction I kind of want.
I can maybe help a little bit with that. Some counselors begin as teachers, as was referenced earlier. They do have to teach for 3 years, and they go back and get their certification after they are a teacher. And there is some therapy that's required, some one-on-one therapy that they have to do. I think they're observed and so forth. But we do have people who start as counselors and then get their 3 years of teaching and then become a school counselor. But we also have the route of, I'm a teacher and I want to become a counselor, and that's their master's program. Mm-hmm. So as Monica said, you have a mix. They're not all LSSPs, licensed school psychologists. Yes. And so they're not all certified at that level, but they all have the school counselor certification.
In reality, you want many of those, but not everyone has that because their specialty is going to be in just helping students navigate which college or secondary program to apply for and how to get their courses. And that's a whole different skill set. And so it is just trying to make sure that we have the right ratio of people who do have that training and the right people in place who are there to help people on their academic path. And then also just a little PSA, I did have a spot come open on the Shack, so if you're listening to this and you like it and you're interested, come find me, talk to me, and we'll see what we can do.
So I'd like to add right on perfect timing. You mentioned something about attendance. I know that there was an addendum or a change made to the bylaws a few years ago. 2 times if you miss it, you're asked to leave. So if that is an issue and you need to replace it, I know we got a list a while back, and I think there were a few dozen people who would like to participate. So my view is if somebody gets on the Shack and realizes they just don't have the time commitment, by all means, let us bring it to our attention. And like Mr. Moses, anybody, let us replace that person because we need you to have a full contingent of people there. And we have people who want to participate.
Yes.
And then one last thing I'll say is when you have the staff meetings, if you would work with Dr. Flores and put that on the agenda, on our calendar. The board has a calendar online that we
The
can look
SHAC meetings on your agenda?
Yes, no, on our calendar.
Okay.
So if you just ask Dr. Flores, because sometimes I have an evening available or something, I would like to just drop in. I haven't been in a year or so.
I've seen you. You're the only one I've seen.
Yeah,
So yes,
and I
please
haven't been,
come.
Last ones I didn't know about some of the meetings until afterwards. And I know I get every now and then, hey, can you make it? Sometimes we have a conflict. But if you put it on our calendar, and sometimes say, oh, you're going to have a next Tuesday, I'm going to be going that direction. I want to drop in. And we normally, as a board member, I don't participate unless I'm asked something, but it's your meeting. I just want to make sure it's working all right, and if I can be available, to help with that otherwise. And again, if there's anything we can help you with, let us know. Certainly let Dr. Flores know. And
Well, we have really great presenters who have come in external.
Yes, I'll thank you those.
So those are great. I mean, I've always wanted the board to come to see some of those.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you both. All right. Okay. All right. With that, let's see. We've been going about 2 hours. Want to take a quick break? Or you want to take a quick break? Let's take a quick break. And then we got a lot of stuff, important stuff. So let's try to see if we can get out of here before 9:30. 9:45. All right. Let's go ahead and get restarted here. It's 9:27. We have quite a few things to go. So let's try to keep our. I don't know what's going on down there, but share it with us all.
I threatened to take his chocolate away, and he
Okay.
said, "Don't get crazy here."
Okay. All right. So we have quite a few important things. We have to take some action items. I don't want those to go too late. So with that, we have 2 more superintendent reports. Can we go through those quickly, Dr. Flores, and we'll get to the action?
Yes, a star report, Dr. Kathy Malerba.
Good evening, President Chadwell, trustees, and Dr. Flores. I am here to share the preliminary STAR results from this spring. Just wanted to let you know that these are, of course, the first administration. Our 5th and 8th graders are covered under the Student Success Initiative, so they get up to 3 opportunities to try to pass STAR if they're not successful the first time. The 2nd administration was earlier this week. And STAR check-in for this biggest administration was today. And so I want to give a shout-out to my team for doing that massive undertaking without me. I usually at least try to put on my sneakers and jeans and help, and today it just wasn't going to happen. And we have a lot of other folks, everyone from state and federal to SPED, instructional technology, that really supports us in this work every year. So I want to thank all of them for their hard work this week. There were no assessment changes this year of note, so these are comparable, and I have some longitudinal slides for you. Just a reminder that we are heading into the second year, or we're in the second year of House Bill 22. The A through F ratings for campuses will apply this coming August. In kind of exciting and innovative news, this is the first year that we had a middle school go all in on online testing. That was Cedar Valley Middle School, and I talked to Dr. Oldham today, and he said it went really well. So, after he has all his results back, he'll probably be able to share that experience with our other middle schools, and we'll see where that goes. But one of the things he mentioned was that he wanted to help, the middle schoolers get ready for high schools because they have embraced online testing. So there's an opportunity there. And because TEA is really dialed back and only provides one paper score report, I like to make sure I include this slide. If you haven't been to the TEA student portal, it is an excellent resource for our families, so I really encourage everyone to use that. And you get scores immediately. It's just like one day after they're released to district staff. So diving into the results, we're looking very strong at 5th and 8th. This is 5th grade reading and math, and progress was very steady at the passing rate, which is the approaches grade level, and then we also had some upward movement at the highest levels of performance, which is really exciting. Those are the levels that are tied, of course, to the board goals. In comparison to the state, also very strong performance, and you'll notice those the biggest differentials are also at the highest levels of performance at meets and masters for our fifth graders in reading and math. Similar patterns for eighth grade, steady progress for passing, and then really some upward movement at the higher levels of performance in both reading and math. And similar pattern in reading and math comparison to the state. Probably one of the biggest performance differentials you'll see all year is that eighth grade math at the master's level, outscoring the district by, I believe it's 26 percentage points. I'm sorry, outperforming the state. Ms. Vessa, I believe, had asked me to specifically address how we're doing it with regard to our board goals. So, of course, these are very preliminary results. We've only got 2 grade levels rolled up in here, but just considering 5th and 8th, they are at or above target for every student group, which is exciting, and hopefully we'll continue on that trajectory. I will say with reading and math, English 1 and English 2 are the toughest tests for kids across the state. So we'll see, how this all plays out. But in math, also 5th and 8th looking very solid relative to our goals, and that's across all student groups. And I also received a question earlier in the week that I'd never even calculated before. So I thought, all right, I want to see this. What is a typical score gain between first and second administration? And on average, we're looking at probably 3 to 4.5 points, somewhere in that range, that we can anticipate after this administration that just passed. Ms. Weir had asked for 100% bar chart versions of these slides, so that's in your packet. There was one number that I could not validate. It was making me crazy, so I will get that figured out for you and get you the final version of this. Probably in next week's board update just makes the most sense. And what questions can I answer for you?
Ms. Vessa.
So we got a school-by-school summary of how each school in the district did on their preliminary 3rd and 5th grade results. And I just want to congratulate certain schools that I feel like just did really awesome, showed great improvement. Wells Branch showed huge improvement. Very proud of them. Union Hill, Double File Trail, Purple Sage all showed amazing improvements in their STAR scores. So super proud of how well they did. There are definitely some schools that didn't do as well. And so I know that we'll be talking about that and how to assist in our budget planning and how to assist those schools in making sure that those trends change and that those schools are also meeting the high standards that many of our other schools and cumulatively our schools are doing. But we do have some schools in the district that just aren't performing at that level, and we need to give them the resources to bring them up to that level.
Ms. Weir.
I didn't quite hear when you said how many percentage points you expect to get on the 2nd and 3rd.
I'll just go back. It's in that final column. Sorry, I was speaking quickly. Between 3.5 and 4.5 points on average.
And that's by the
last couple of
3rd
years. That's actually just from the 1st to 2nd administration.
Okay. And so you probably haven't looked at 2nd to 3rd to see if we would we go up again that much?
I don't think so. At that point, you're also up against summer school attendance and things like that, and so I wouldn't expect maybe quite that big of a change, and a lot fewer kids, of course.
Right. I'm just sort of curious what happens to the kids that don't. I mean, because just looking. I mean, it's great. Actually, I kind of like. You can see how many we moved up into that top category really on the. But if you're talking, 8%, 13% that didn't pass, even if you give them the 4, that we're talking about 10% that may not pass. I just have no idea, and that may actually be a Mandy question, but what happens to those kids?
So if after third administration they don't pass, and sometimes student families will opt out of third administration, so it's the same effect. The campus, there's a process in which a grade placement committee comes together, a campus team comes together, including the parent, the counselor, a teacher who knows the student well, and the principal. And they look at overall the student's performance during the year and make a decision then whether it's best to place them in the next grade level or to hold them where they are. So there's a meeting that comes together, and they make an informed decision at that point.
So thank you for the feedback, the presentation. And I'll echo, I'm glad to see so much progress. Middle school, and I look at the actual individual scores, but it is alarming at the number of campuses that have, that have gone down by double digits. Now, if I'm reading this right, some of them were close before, and then all of a sudden, they're small campuses? Some of these are not. They're not Title I. They're not all, or not completely Title I. This is, I guess, back to what do we need to do? What do you need? Why do there continue to be just double-digit drops on some of these first administration?
Well, the only part of that I will answer, and I'll pitch it back to Mandy and Dr.
It's a
Presley,
tough question,
I
know, and I don't expect an exact answer, but we've been working on this for years, and it continues to be. As a district, we're doing well, but we have some that are alarmingly just. It's surprising to see that. So,
well, the only part I can add without really digging in and talking to people at different schools is to say that those smaller group sizes, a few extra kids can make a huge difference in a percentage. So that's always something that I would look at first, and. There's always going to be variation in performance, and there's variation also from class to class. So that's hard to quantify, but there's a little bit. You can expect a little bit of this kind of variation from year to year. But then, in terms of a systematic response, I'll have to pitch it back to Mandy.
I was going to say the same thing. Small schools are particularly vulnerable with a few kids moving out, moving in. That can make a great difference. That can hit the school, because remember our PEAM snapshot date is the end of October. So if you have an influx of fifth graders in a school, maybe even 5 or 6 in a smaller school, who come in as early in the fifth grade year, and if there are multiple grade levels behind, it's a steep pull, to pull them up. So I always worry a little bit more about our smaller schools being subject to those shifts, just as Kathy said.
And I know you all send out a weekly enrollment spreadsheet, and I like that. And it shows there's 2 extra columns on there that shows enrollment, new kids, how many, and some of it's amazing how many of these campuses the mobility is. But I also know that some of these campuses don't seem to have that much mobility, and they're still having a tough time. But and then if they're moving from within the district, that's always a big help. I know that. But if they're coming from a different district, not that those districts are bad, but they just have a different curriculum. So, again, please tell us what you need on that. Just work with Dr. Flores, because this is, and hopefully, even if it gets to 3.5%, 4% gain from the second administration, you're not going to make up a double-digit drop. So, unless there's just a. So
one other promising thing that I wanted to share with you is a couple of months ago you approved new English language arts reading resources for K through 8, and the last time we adopted those resources was 12 years ago. So our teachers have been working with, and while we buy a ton of supplemental, but they've been working with some resources that are fairly dated, and pulling together from different resources that we've also provided. So I have hope that, not that is the end-all, be-all, but we're going to have much more solid instructional materials in the hands of our teachers with this new adoption on the ELA side.
Okay, Mr. Moses, and then Ms. Vessa.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, thank you for putting this data together. That's always great. I look forward to seeing it at the end of the year when we have all tests taken and see where we're at and get a good picture then. But maybe for some of the newer trustees also, I thought there's always a point of confusion in the community when they look at this. Can you go through and explain approaches, meets, masters? Because I feel like there's always the confusion on especially on approaches and what that really tells.
Sure. Well, for those of you who've been around for the entire STAR program, which started in 2012, approaches is what used to be the meet standard level of performance. It was passing the test. But if you'll also remember, STAR came with some really aggressive goals, trying to move every student in the state towards a college and career-ready level of performance. And so what used to be the final level 2 college-ready standard is now MEETS. And then Masters was the equivalent of advanced performance. So if you look at TA's goals, if you look at the 60 by 30 goals, if I'm saying that right, from the coordinating board, it's that MEETS level of performance that's so important, and that's why it's the metric we're using for the board goal, because that's the one that says, you know, there might be some measurement error in there, but that even at third grade, you've got this sense that the student's on track to be ready for college. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just kind of providing a little bit more color and context to those 3 labels, because it is, to the layperson who's not involved in it as much, it can be confusing.
And I know that label change is confusing for families. It was really about, when the new commissioner came on board, really being able to say, okay, we've fully implemented the STAR program. MEETS is what we're shooting for, and kind of get past that. We're going to ratchet up the passing standard every year, which wasn't really working. And you know, it's very difficult to make a population level change. It's an investment of resources and time to move that many kids along. I don't know if you looked at the ends on the bar chart, but we're talking about 350,000 kids at any given grade level. So it takes time, and you know, it takes early intervention and so forth to really make these big, lofty changes. So what they ended up with was kind of flat performance. It takes a long time to really grow a system like this.
Okay, Mr. Math, and then did you have?
Oh, my turn? Yeah. Okay, a couple of quick questions. I know we capture this information at the campus level and the grade level. Do we capture it at the classroom level?
Yes, in the data warehouse, teachers can log in and look at the results just for their classroom. And in another program we have, Eduphoria, allows teachers to do the same thing.
Okay, and this might be a naive question, but I'll ask it anyway. Could we identify teachers that have just had really demonstrated success picking scores up and financially incent them at the campuses that need them the most?
In theory, that's possible. It becomes a very complicated question very quickly. You know, teachers tend to want to choose where they work, for example. But I think you'll see some of the legislation that's in process right now is leaning in that direction, really rewarding highly effective teachers. You know, there's a lot more to being an effective teacher than just hitting, of course, the highest levels of performance. Sometimes being a highly effective teacher means you got your kids all to pass, right? Just depending on what their starting point was. So the answer is yes, but there's just a lot of complexity behind that as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Bessa, did you have your light on? Okay. And then Ms. Weir. Okay.
So we're talking a little bit about like strategies that could help our campuses that are struggling perform at higher levels. And I knew a little bit more about 2 of the 4 campuses that I highlighted. And those 2 campuses had, I'd met with their principals, and they had talked to me about how they were tracking students very strategically and making sure that those kids were making the benchmarks and meeting the progress. And they were all, as a team on campus, working together to make sure kids were progressing. And I specifically talked to those 2, and they were telling me how hard they were working and how hopeful they were to see results. And then I look at their scores, and they saw great results. They're just being very strategic and getting together as teams and making goals and then tracking those goals throughout the year, student by student, and giving intervention when they needed it. And I just think that I know that those two campuses did that, and I've asked other principals about it, and they weren't necessarily as focused on those and achieving those results. I don't know. I mean, as a district, it's definitely a philosophical question. Do we want to be focused on seeing better results on our exams, or do we want to measure our success another way, or do we want to do both? I mean, like, these are philosophical questions, and these particular campuses wanted, their principals, their leadership wanted to see results in performance on the STAR and other exams. And I'm not saying that principals that don't have that emphasis are wrong. It's just a different philosophical question. But we as a board have to lead in terms of that, in terms of what do we want our campuses to focus on.
Okay. Mr. Real quick. Otherwise,
Real quick. I was just going to, I think you took the words out of my brain that I was kind of sitting here thinking about, because it is a philosophical question. And it's what I was going to hit on. It's just, this is, and I fall in the trap sometimes too, is not remembering that this is one data point out of what happens in a classroom day in and day out all year long as far as other things that are happening to see student success. So I want to celebrate what we're doing good, keep an emphasis on where we need to grow and where we hope to see some gains in the next few tests, but also always keep in mind this is a small part of the snapshot of what makes up our students.
Okay. Ms. Weir.
I had just a technical question, because I did absolutely love being able to check scores online. I got my little code and I got to go in and check, and it was pretty awesome.
That's pretty amazing.
And you could see all the questions, and we could talk about which ones we missed. And so, I know that was a TA thing, but I guess I'm actually just curious. And you can't guarantee that a parent that gets a piece of paper reads the score anyway. But is there any way we can tell that our parents are accessing that? Does TA allow us to know that, hey, most of our parents have checked that, or there are groups of parents that have no idea what their kids scored?
That is a question that I'd be happy to submit to performance reporting at TEA. I have absolutely no idea. But just to reassure you, in the summer we do receive a comprehensive score report for every student. So at least by the beginning of next school year, every family has the paper copy in hand of all assessments that the students took the previous year. So they will get something.
Yeah, it just sort of occurred to me that I really enjoyed it, but then I was like, man, if you were a kid, if you're a parent that didn't check and your student didn't pass, then it may be shocking when you find out they had to take it again, or maybe even a third time. I don't know, but
yeah. Well, and campuses, of course, we did notify everyone of whether their students passed or not after 5th and 8th, first administration. Yeah.
Ms. Bessa.
I'll ask.
So I know that a lot of people know that our district is rated like a letter grade, and this next year the campuses will get a letter grade. So we just got 5th and 8th grade, so that's elementary and middle school. What is their letter grade going to be based on?
You mean what is each school's letter grade going to be based on?
Is there many, because Mason was talking about there's many components of performance. So Is this letter grade based on just our performance? Is it based on our community surveys too? Is it are there other components to that letter grade other than the STAR?
Not at elementary and middle. There's only one metric that is not based on STAR, and that's in Domain 3. There's a line for TELPAS performance, so that growth in English proficiency from year to year. High schools have the college and career readiness metrics that give a little more well-rounded picture of what the campus is accomplishing. But yes, it is a very heavily weighted on STAR.
So if we want to make sure that all of our campuses are highly rated, then we as a board have to focus on this test. Is that what you're saying?
It is. And then, of course, TEA does provide the opportunity for us to have a local accountability system, which is not really anything we've discussed or talked about pursuing, you would still have to include a large component of what they provide in your ultimate rating, but you'd have the opportunity to self-rate as well, and that's at the campus and district level. So it's certainly something we could talk about if that was of interest to the board.
Okay. Something?
Yeah, I just
Okay,
wanted to
didn't
make one more comment, kind of piggyback off of Mason and Trustee Vessa, that while STAR is extremely important to this district and it's something that is a benchmark for our students, that it is not the foundation of what we gauge our students by. And I can't help but say this, but speaking, I have 2 children that had testing anxiety. That is a real thing, and that we can't always go by, well, this district's doing this and then this district is doing that. It's the individual student at the end of the day that's taking that test. Mm-hmm. We don't know if they were yelled at that morning. We don't know if they had breakfast. We don't know if they have testing anxiety. I just want us to keep the bigger picture, which is the child and what the individual child needs, not necessarily what they know is a reflection of the results of STAR.
I 100% agree. I mean, I remember my first grader coming home this week and being like, we got to be so quiet at school because the STAR. And he's not even taking the test, but he knows all his older friends are stressed out about it. And so I think your points are very well made.
And I see on Facebook even sometimes, pray for our students, pray for it. And while it's great, we need to pray for our students all the time, but gosh, it's a little disheartening that we have to pray so hard for a student to do well on a test. That's what probably bothers me the most, we're so concentrating on testing that we're not addressing the whole child sometimes.
I think that speaks to a lot of the things that we talk about. I mean, we talk about, we're sad that we have to have, or we feel like we have to have, SROs at our campus, that we live in a world where that's the case. I think to a certain extent, it's sad that we have these tests which judge the quality of the education in our district. But the truth of the matter is, when parents are looking at a district, when they're looking at a school, they go to these scores. And that's just the reality that we live in. It may not be the ideal, what we would want, but it is what it is. And so I don't want to put an overemphasis or an overstress on this, but I just want to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward and using the tools we know that work to make sure that we're doing the best we can to give our schools success as they move forward and are rated based on this one test. And whether or not a family chooses our district or another option is going to be based on a score on a test. And that's just the reality we live in. And so for me, it's a sad truth, but it is what it is. And so I think we just have to use the tools we know that are effective to do what we can in this reality, just like we do with safety and security.
All right. Okay. Dr. Malera, thank you. All right, we'll go to agenda item H3, monthly financials.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And you just heard from the best research and evaluation person in the state of Texas. So, again, she is amazing. And so our campuses, as we continue this and finish, we hear you loud and clear, Board, but I also, again, want to just make sure that this is just still early on the results. We're hoping for better results at the same time. We also applaud our great teachers, and we hope that they don't feel they have to ever teach to the test. And again, we've got great teachers in this district, so I commend them for tough work and hard work this week. With that being said, monthly financials with Dr. Kenneth Oddix, now the best CFO in the state.
Good evening, President Chadwell, members of the board, and Dr. Flores. As the board previously requested, tonight marks a change from doing a quarterly financial update to a monthly financial report. Given the hour, I'm just going to give a quick overview, given that we've previously discussed this financial template with the full board and also went through in detail this financial report with the PIB committee on Monday night. So on page 2 gives a one-page overview of the general fund, food service, debt service, and bond fund speaks to the revenue and expenses for each one of those funds, as well as fund balance or any kind of highlights that happened within the month or on a year-to-date basis. On page 3 with the general fund speaks there to the fact that we had both the total revenue for the month and year-to-date were better than budget. Also, expenses on both for the month of March and year-to-date are better than budget. And we ended the month of March with a fund balance in the general fund of roughly $217 million worth of fund balance. In terms of the food service had total revenue for the month of March of $1.9 million, and for year-to-date has revenue of $15.6 million. Expenses for the month were $1.7 million, and year-to-date $11.6 million. And the food service fund ended the month of March with a fund balance of $8.9 million. On debt service, the main thing to talk about there is just on a year-to-date basis, we've taken in $98.6 million of revenue, had expenses of $91.4 million, which is less than the budgeted amount, but that's due to the refunding that we did last year. We have a current fund balance of $103.7 million. We make semi-annual debt payments. The next one is scheduled for August the 1st, which is at $83.7 million. And we have outstanding principal at the end of March of $648.3 million, outstanding interest of $278 million. So our total debt outstanding at the end of March was $926 million. Those numbers will obviously move up significantly because this financial is at the end of March. We did the bond sale for the 2018 bond, first sale in April, so those numbers will be reflected in next month's financial statement. Then on the last page with the bonds, these numbers reflect both the 2008 and 2014 bond. So we had interest income for the month of March of $108,000, had expenses for both of those bonds of $1.9 million. And the most important thing that I want to talk with the full board about tonight, and talked about this with the PIB committee on Monday, is next month the plan will be to come to the full board with the request of creating a capital projects fund and setting up a fund balance in that. As we've previously discussed, big picture, what we're after is that when we're the budget that we're building for next year and what we want to do on an ongoing basis with our general fund is that we want all of our operating expenses to be budgeted and to hit one fund, Fund 199. And so that's the way we're creating, the logic we're creating our budget for next year and the intent of our game plan going forward. And then to not have things like capital projects, which don't belong hitting the operating statement, have those that has its own fund. So, the board will still approve those just like they currently do, but that will be its own fund. So we'll have a capital projects fund and our general fund. If we set up this fund, what we talked about with the PIB committee on Monday night was that if we set up this capital projects fund, started it with $10 million, then that money would be available. So if we're doing portables, if we're doing things that are any capital project that's not bond related, that would be drawn from that fund. And so that's that logic. The other thing we're planning to bring to the board next month is we currently have 23 different designations of our general fund balance. So we've got the general fund divided into a whole lot of different categories. Want to simplify that and and bring a game plan to the board next month that when we close the books for this year, we go from 23 different categories to just 6 categories with that. And so we'll just giving you a heads up that'll be coming to the full board next month. So with that, if there's any questions, be happy to try to answer them.
Mr. Moses and then Mr. Meth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief because I just want to highlight the points you just made that we just discussed at the PIB meeting. And Trustees Vesta, Gonzalez, feel free to jump in and if I missed something. But really the goal, once we're thoughts next month, of that $10 million would be things that pop up during the year. a sewer line breaks or something happens at a school that and all of a sudden we need to do something to address a need there, or if there is a bond and there's maybe one or two small projects that just didn't make the cut on the very last, that maybe but we know they're important to doing those kind of things, then it really is meant as things arise, not as an ongoing big project fund.
Okay. Mr. Meth.
Yeah, thank you. I really like the new format. I think it's much easier to follow and more transparent, so kudos. For the general fund balance of $216,800, whatever, how much of that is allocated and how much is unallocated?
The unallocated versus...
you don't have that right now?
But we'll put it in board notes.
So maybe that's a good number to just...
To break out on a monthly basis? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, this is good to see this new format. I think we're going to grow into it, so thank you for putting it together.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we'll go to agenda item. We've already done I, safety and security. We'll go to agenda item, action items for consideration by consent. We don't have any. So we'll go to agenda item K, K1 approval of the 2019-2020 compensation plan. That's great. Dr. Flores.
Yes, we are tonight. We are recommending approval of the compensation plan, and we have Kristen Gray, and we also have Dr. Oddix, and we also have Maya Mercer, who is really wanting to step down as well at this time. So I'm going to bring her down. Any questions, thoughts, or comments of staff with regards to our compensation plan?
Good evening, President Chadwell, Dr. Flores, and Board of Trustees. Last week, we came to you and presented some information regarding the TASB salary study that Cindy Clegg spoke about, as well as some additional market study information we conducted with other positions in our district. And we spoke to a couple of options for a general pay increase. For tonight, we had 3 last week, and so we've added a 2.5% general increase for review this evening. And so I'll just go through each of the 3 options for your consideration. For the 2.5% for teachers and librarians and RNs, that would involve increasing the starting salary, which is currently $46,000 to $48,800, and that would involve a $1,300 general pay increase, with some adjustments to steps 1 through 10 for compression to alleviate some pay compression. For the counselors, the starting pay would go to $52,000 with a $1,600 general increase. And then the blue box represents the TASB study, so we would recommend moving forward with the recommendations from TASB that would involve a 2.5% of midpoint increase. Same thing on the instructional and administrative support. Same midpoint increase. We'd also like to implement the recommendations that TASB made regarding our deaf ed interpreter employees. And then a market adjustment for the operations, support, and transportation departments to increase that minimum wage, which is currently $10.43 to $12 per hour, resulting in a $1.57 per hour increase for those staff. And in transportation, we would raise the bus driver rate to $19.03 per hour, and also give bus assistants the $1.57 and a $3 per hour raise to bus drivers and positions above bus drivers. So the remaining scenarios are very similar, with just some adjustments for under the 3%. This teacher starting pay would go to $49,000 with a $1,500 increase, counselors to $52,300 with a $1,900 increase. And then the same implementation of the TASB recommendations. Instead of the 2.5 of midpoint, it would be 3. And then the market adjustment is the same under all 3 scenarios. And then the 3.5 teacher starting would be $49,300 with an $1,800 increase, and counselors would be $52,600 with a $2,212 increase. So the bottom line in terms of estimated costs for each scenario. For the 2.5% raise is $11.5 million total, and the 3% raise is $12.7, and 3.5% would be $14.2. And so, are there any
Okay.
questions that we can answer?
Ms. Vessa.
This is actually to Dr. Onyx. Right now, all the budget presentations that we've received assumed some type of additional funding. We saw two in our last meeting, one if the House version of HB3 passed, one if the Senate version of HB3 passed. Right now it's in conference. We're not quite sure what's going to come out of it. But if we were just living on what we had with no additional revenue, where would we be sitting this year? Like if we weren't factoring in the $24 million that comes from each of those plans. One is, heavily weighted towards the $5,000 pay increase, using up all that money, pretty much all the money, and then the other is more flexible. But if we didn't have that money, where would we be in terms of our budget, in terms of being able to afford these pay increases?
So the logic is pretty straightforward, and that what we shared with the board at the budget workshop last week was, in terms of House Bill 3, was a slightly better than a break-even budget. It had like a $1 million. So if the additional funding of like the $20 million of additional funding went away, your bottom line would fall $20 million. So we'd have around a negative $20 million on the House bill side. So that's that. Now we could all assign our own probability to, right now what's being discussed is, between House Bill 3 and the Senate Bill 4. Well, that pumps that money in there. Now, like the Senate bill has the handcuff of having to put $20 million basically toward teacher raises and librarians. So it's all in, what odds do you assign to each of those possible probabilities?
So the last time I asked you there's another actually wrench in this too. There's a big debate right now on whether we're going to move from prior year values to current year values, and you said that would affect our budget by about 7%, because that's the gap I'll let you go. Like if that's, so we come through and we get more flexibility in the House plan, but they move to current year values, how would that impact those two scenarios?
Well, I'd say there's an awful lot to that question, and really what I'd have to know in terms of running the number is, from current law, what specifically is being changed, and then run the number off of that. I mean, it's really a deal of I've got to know which variables to change, and then when you move a variable, you move a number. But if you say, hey, I want to see this assumption, we can go into Omar's model, which is basically the Excel model that has the assumptions in it, and say, okay, if we assumed it wasn't current law, it was X, Y, and Z, we'd move those numbers, and that would be the quantification of that guess.
Okay, Ms. Weir.
Well, I actually just had a more philosophical question. It was part of the email that I sent. We talked last time about other districts waiting until we make our move, and then they do their hiring, their budget, and pay more. And then we know the legislation. I mean, we have a week, and there may be a special session, but I mean, my question is kind of timing. It's like, why now, when if we waited just a week or 2 weeks, we might have more definitive information from the legislature, or at least see what's coming out and what's in. I don't know. It just seems like we're rushing, and if we vote on something and then we can't fulfill that obligation because of whatever happens from the state, I mean, I know we can amend our budget, but it just seems a little more prudent to maybe hold off.
Here's like two, and it's kind of like the cost of perfect information is really what we're talking about, and the downsides for us, to me, as an organization of the waiting is, we're currently with our starting teacher wage of $46,000, and other districts, so we're tied for last under the old pay scales, and other districts have some of them have given their, have said, here's what we're going to already. And so if we're trying to, out there between now and whenever we make our decision, trying to recruit, we're trying to recruit being the lowest paying teacher salary in the local market. So that's one concern. From just a logistics piece, if we wait until the 6th to make the decision of the pay raise, that's just going to give staff a 1 week time to, like for Kristen's work, to get what, from a practical standpoint, you've got to take 6,500 employees and get them linked to all the new pay tables. And then within that same week, it's like, okay, then hand off to accounting, and those 6,500 people literally have to get proper accounting code to 30 different account codes, because each employee, you not only have their salary, but then you've got their medical, their TRS, their workers' comp, their SUI, all of that's got to get coded. So it's, for 90% of the budget, it's just a very compressed time frame in order to make that happen. So those are on the why not wait? That would be the downsides of waiting.
Maybe this would be your question real quick, but this is for the future budget. So, but anyway, go ahead, Mr. Moses, and then Ms. Vessa.
Mr. President, Nikki, I kind of feel like I held a deja vu, and I mean that because my very first year on the board.
You're in the other room over there.
Other room, and I brought up the exact same point that Amy made. I mean, almost, it really is like the exact same point. At the end of a session, I was looking at the numbers and saying, oh my, what? But the fact of the matter is, I think Dr. Audick hit the nail on the head. It's like we're out there competing for the best and brightest teachers right now. We got to make sure we're attracting them, we're encouraging them to stay. We're actually trying to get our good teachers and our great teachers to stay.
Well, it's a retention issue as well.
It is.
I don't want teachers to leave without knowing. There's no guarantee we can meet next week. There's 100 different. I think I've preached to you when you brought it up before.
No, all six, all six were jumping. I mean, I was the lone guy, but I came around and I see it. And I think, though, also we need to take care of our staff. They do a lot of great work, and even if, yes, that might mean if there's a worst case scenario, yes, that means we're going to have a few late nights up here figuring it out. But we need to take care of our staff. We need to be competitive in the marketplace if you want to continue to attract and retain teachers and make this be a destination district.
And I'm not, I would vote for 3.5. I would maybe even vote more and put more into health care. I'm not debating that at all. I just want to make sure that we do it in a way, because 2 years ago I don't know that it was so clear there was going to be legislation on school finance, and it's very clear, right, that something's going to happen this year. And I guess that's just what makes me a little bit nervous. And I know that makes the teachers nervous, and I don't want that, but I also I want us to be able to fulfill that commitment. I want us to be able to say.
But the tone with the legislature this session is much more positive than it was 2 years ago as well. Yes, something awful could happen. There could be a special session, but they have set the pulse of positivity and lessening the burden, and it wasn't like that 2 years ago at all.
Ms. Vessa and then Ms. Feller.
Okay. So if we adopt a budget or a salary increase tonight, and we don't know what's coming out, and we have to change it, would they have to make all those alterations in the 1 week anyway? What if we adopt a salary increase tonight, and then something comes out of the legislature, and we have to revisit this because, I don't know, maybe, Mason, what you're saying is we should adopt a budget with a salary increase whether we have the money or we don't have the money, because that's just what's right to do, so we just find the money. And that's a valid point.
Well, it's that or not give teacher raises. And
well, it's the extent.
I'm not for that.
It's the extent.
So we're just trying to get them up to the cost of living. And,
right.
My question is, if we approve something tonight and then we have to change it again, then do they still have to do all that work to change 6,500 employees' codes?
Well, this is for next year's budget, right?
Right.
So it's not like you have to calculate within in a week, but for the prediction for and I agree with all of us. Anyway, I'm gonna jump back in, but Ms. Feller's been patiently waiting.
So I'm going to play the newbie card again because this is the first time I've sat through this process, and I look at these up here, and I'm like with Trustee Weir. I want to pay our teachers as much as we can. Give me a 4.5% scenario, because they're underpaid, underappreciated for the work that they do. But what I don't understand is, and maybe you can help me figure this out, is how do I know what we really can afford based on all the scenarios that are out there? And that's like, I want to be fiscally responsible, but I also want to, we're talking about $1.7 million between the 2.5 to the 3.5. Seems like we could find $1.7 million difference between the two, but I'm not in the money finding business that well. So I need you to help me understand how we make this decision according to our budget and what we can afford with all these scenarios that are out there.
Okay. So here's I think, because we could talk a whole long time if you went into all the detail, but to me it boils down to this. With House Bill 3, what we talked about last week was that had a $1.3 million bottom line with a 3% raise in it. Okay, so if you said, hey, if we went up another 0.5 point, if we went to 3.5, that would take that bottom line slightly negative. If you didn't change any other number, you'd be slightly negative at the 3.5. Okay, so if the board tapped the gavel on 3%, you'd have a 1.3. The number from last week would have a 1.3. If we did the 3.5, you'd basically be saying, hey, I'm a little negative, and if the board said, hey, you got to find a way to bring us a balanced budget, okay, we could do that work. The big wild card is what's actually going to come out of the legislature. Is it House Bill 3? Is it in between House Bill 3 and Senate Bill 4? That's the unknown. But in terms of if House Bill 3 happened, could we as a district, could I bring you a balanced budget with a 3% raise or a 3.5% raise? If you said, Kenneth, I'm giving you House Bill 3, now give me a balanced budget with either a 3 or a 3.5, I'd say, yeah, we can do that. Okay. So that is the starting point. The hard thing about Senate Bill 4 is that mandates, in essence, taking that $24 million and saying we'll give $20 million of that to just this one group, to the teachers and librarians. Well, then you take a whole lot of local control out of the equation because all of that money just went to that one category. And then, well, what about the rest of the staff? What about the other categories that Kristen went? That's a harder thing. And kind of what was kind of said early on is sort of like the expectation is kind of like there's going to be a horse trade somewhere in the proverbial middle, and so that's the unknown piece. I would, just speaking for my own, given, like I said the first time I met, I believe in, I want to do as much as we can. You win with the best, attracting and retaining the best people. Well, to me, the 3 or 3.5 of the board one, that's how you do it. If we did nothing, to me, how do you attract if you're the lowest paying job? How do you retain if people could say, well, hey, others are giving raises? That's the rub we're in.
So if I'm understanding what you said correctly, we pick a percentage that we feel is what we want to make as a compensation increase. And then should the legislature change something, then we just come back and have these discussions again and say, this is now what our bottom line is with what the legislature has passed, and this is what our line looks like, and now it looks like we're going to be $20 million shy, and this raise that you approved now puts us at $24 million, and whatever, so we just go with the assumption right now that we can find it and make a balanced budget with a 3 or a 3.5, and then come back and address it if the legislature change?
Yeah, because the situation would be for us, if the board approves a pay raise tonight, whichever one you choose, then we're no different than all the other districts that have said that have voted for a pay raise. If the legislature comes and says, hey, forget what all of you said, you're going to do what we tell you to do, then yeah, the numbers have got to change, and we'd have to go in and change numbers. But the piece there, they're not going to meet until the end of if they don't go into special session, then at the last Monday of the month, they close their session and they say, here's the rules you got to play by. Well, then everybody's got to, okay, whatever that, to the extent that's different than what we approve, then the work is the work, and you've got to meet the requirement.
Okay, so last clarification. If we vote for a 3.5, you can bring us a balanced budget.
Do I get House Bill 3 money?
Yeah, we're doing all of this right now under House Bill 3 assumptions, because that's what you presented us last week.
Right.
So under the House Bill 3 assumptions that you presented last week, if we go with the 3.5, you can make that bottom line zero out?
If I get House Bill 3 money, yes.
Okay. And then if we don't, then we'll come back and readdress it. Okay.
I don't remember doing that. Anyway, Mr. Moses, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would love to do 3.5 or more too, but I would almost rather just be a little bit more on the 3 side, and then if we get even better House Bill 3 money, come back and say, hey, we can give you the extra 0.5% too. But I mean, I'm good with either one, but it's kind of a thought process.
And one thing, just to update the board since the last time we met as a full board last week, is we had our first meeting with the Staffing Efficiency Committee last week, and literally what I've told them and told everybody I've met with, to me, really what my goal for us as a district is, we're competitive. Like if we do the 3.5, whatever, that'll put us in the hunt locally, okay? But it's still not going to put us in the hunt at the peer group at the Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston area. That's really where I'm hopeful that because I've told everyone, look, if we can find a way, because 89% of our cost is people, if we can find a way through efficiency to, get the work done, but not have as many people, not getting rid of anybody, but as we attrit and all that sort of thing, if we can find a way to run our show more efficiently, then absolutely, we'll put that into people's paychecks, and then it's a whole different game. If we're beating anybody locally and we're competing with the Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston area, then why wouldn't we be the absolute destination district? All the reputation we've got, all that sort of thing, and then if we're paying any more than anybody around here, hey, you want to live in the Austin area? We're the highest paying. That's what I'm after.
All right, so we have a proposal. We have a suggestion here. We can vote on one of these numbers. We've had a request that we wait until June 6th when we have a workshop. We'll see what the legislature does. They end their session on May 27th. That would give you time to do it. The only reason
I believe June 6th is a tentative date, isn't it?
Well, I'm just saying that's
I'm asking.
Said. It was a tentative date for our workshop, but the point would be that we might have more flexibility at that point. But we scheduled a night. I don't remember us ever voting on something and going back and changing it. But I guess until we adopt our budget in June, we can do it. But anyway, Mr. Math.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the adoption of the 2019-2020 compensation plan as reflected in Option B and Appendix B, corresponding to the 3% raise.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Ms. Weir, any further discussion?
I guess if we're doing it tonight and we can go back and revisit afterwards, I would rather go with 3.5. If our goal really is retention and recruiting, I think we've got to go with the highest number.
I agree.
Okay. So this is Robert Rules of Order.
Yep.
If you want to do that, make a motion to amend that motion. We'll vote on that amendment. So,
do we vote on Mr. Math's motion?
Make a motion to amend the motion.
Somebody has to amend.
Oh, I forgot
So,
my
Ms. Weir,
Robert's
you made
rules.
this.
Hold
You do it.
on.
Yeah. I vote to amend.
I move.
I move to amend.
Hold on, let me pull it up. Okay, so I move to amend the recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the adoption of the 2019-2020 compensation plan as reflected in Option C and Appendix C.
Which is 3.5%.
Which is
okay.
3.5.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the 3.5% option, up from 3%. Any further discussion?
So, I agree. I think that that we should give our teachers as much as we can, and I vow that and then I was at the Capitol today advocating. I will keep going back and advocating until we get a decision that we're going to get the money we need. But I want to say that this is not guaranteed. We may have to come back. So I wish we could say we could promise this, but I'm saying as part of me, I'm not promising this. I have been fighting for this whole year, and I will continue to fight till the end, but I can't control the outcome. And so this is our intention, but it's dependent, it's not in our hands. We don't control this. The legislature controls this. So I would encourage our teachers, our staff, our community to reach out to the legislature and tell them that we need the House version. We need the House version so that we can compensate our staff, that we can balance our budget. It is not too late to advocate. Call our senators. Our senators are Senator Schwartner and Senator Watson. Senator Watson is on the conference committee. We have 4 representatives in our district: Celia Israel, Vicki Goodwin, James Talarico, and John Busey. Advocate. Tell them that we really need House Bill 3 because we want to do this for our teachers, but it's dependent on the legislature. It's not dependent on us.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion. We have a second to amend the motion. My recommendation is whatever we go forward with, we do it unanimously. If this passes at 3.5%, it passes, and then there's no need to go back to the 3%. I'm just asking, I know we have a lot of unknown variables, but with that, any other comments?
We've kind of double talked here a little bit.
We have to be careful that we don't violate take any consensus before the vote.
Right. I'm just saying that, we're not really doing the recommendation.
We're going beyond the recommendation.
We're doing what Kenneth's telling us to do. He said that we need to be as competitive as we possibly can to attract the best talent so we can have, that's what he told us to do. And so I feel like we're doing what our CFO has told us to do. He's been committed to finding efficiencies in our budget, and I see that process in the PIB meetings. And so we had it, they did a great job this year being $12 million under budget. So,
Dr. Flores has.
I just want to make sure. I think what Kenneth was speaking on the question of if we go 3.5, can he balance the budget? And he said he would, in that instance, be able to do so if all variables. So from an administrative standpoint, just to be clear, that's a 3.0 recommendation. However, again, the discussion for this board, I think, is really germane to the 3.5. Just the fact that we're going to move on this tonight is victory for us and for our teachers and our staff. So this conversation, y'all continue.
All right. So we have a motion. We have a second for 3.5 to amend the motion. That means if it passes, then there's no need to go back. Okay? So we have a motion for 3.5%. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of 3.5%, raise your hand. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, so back to Robert's rule. We don't need to go back to the other motion. Is that right? So 3.5. Okay, 3.5%, pending no major disaster from the legislature on May 27th. Anyway,
it might not be May 27th.
All right.
So to clarify,
okay.
Did y'all approve a 3.5% raise?
Yes.
We did.
Yes.
We just did.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Hang on. Our attorney looks like she's. Okay. We don't need to. We're good.
Quick, let's move on. All right. Okay, so we don't have to go that one. All right. Go to agenda item K2, award of competitive seal proposal for bond project for Kelly Reeves Athletic Complex turf replacement. Dr. Flores.
Yes, Mr. Terry Wooster is ready to answer any questions if there are any questions on this item.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Ready to answer any questions and perhaps a quick introduction to competitive seal proposal. We haven't seen those for a while, and so I'd be happy to introduce Mr. Spiegel to the table if there are questions.
Can you give us a quick rundown of the process, because we got comments on it, and Mr. Moses has Mr. Spiegel's coming down.
Yes.
Mr.
And
Moses.
so
I was going to let him talk and then make the motion, and so we can go ahead and.
I'd like to get a quick summary,
That's
because
fine.
I have a
Yeah,
couple questions about it. Thank you. I'll make a note. You're going to make a motion. Tell us the process of how you came up with. We see the spreadsheet here.
Okay, so the spreadsheet you have in front of you is basically a example of the information that we kind of compiled through the process of, obviously going out to bid. And what we have is, and if you all remember a couple of months ago, I kind of went through the process of how we did the technical evaluations as well as how we did pricing. And so from the standpoint of what we're looking at on the technical side is really the ability of that company to be able to perform the services. And with this particular type of process, what allows us to be able to do is to identify the company that really is going to be in the best interest for the district. We also take in consideration that price is going to be a factor in that. And where the technical side is more of a subjective, the pricing is much more objective based on a particular formula we actually use to be able to determine what the points are going to be. The points are determined by the end user, the department. In this particular case, it was going to be construction with some information provided by the athletic department. And so from that standpoint, what we do is we put it on the street. We go through, in construction, we go through a pre-proposal conference, which basically allows the vendors to come in and kind of hear what needs to be said, as well as what any questions that may be posed by those particular vendors prior to that time. And then during the process, when we go through the pre-proposal conference, we may have some addendums that go out that kind of change some of the specifications. Now, those specifications obviously is a driver. We want to make sure that when we go through and we do everything fair and equitable, so when those specifications are written, we stand by them. And if there are any changes to those specifications, we do it through an addendum process. We'll put the addendum out on the street once, to all the vendors that have shown interest, pretty much the list we originally sent it to. And then from that standpoint, then once we do close that particular solicitation, then whatever the specifications are at that time is what we will follow. When we go through the evaluation process, we will go through and, we have a team of individuals that work for the district that have the expertise that's necessary for us to be able to determine if this company is, viable based on the input that they give us within the solicitation response. And they, as an individual, will actually put their points down based on what's been allocated. And then what we'll do is we'll pull all this together and run an average. And then we'll come up with a total. So the number you see on that the page was given to you when you come to the technical side. That is really an average based on all the points that were spread out over several different areas that we have on the technical side. On the price, again, that was pretty much based on simply what their bid was at the time, what they did submit. So and then once we do is we compile those two together. And based on law, we do have to go directly to the highest ranked. So in other words, we look at the one that has the most points. And that's the ones we'll recommend to you.
Okay. Ms. Weir? Oh.
Yeah, I was just curious on ACT Global, why they were considered non-responsive.
And I believe what you're talking about in this particular case, the specifications that was posted through the solicitation said that they had to have a minimum of 20 successful installations. In this particular case, what we did was we actually had to go to them and after the fact and say, we're trying to find this information within the solicitation, so can you provide us a list? And they did. They provided us a list of 25 locations. We actually did call those locations. We had 2 staff members outside the purchasing office that did make those phone calls. And the problem we ran into is a number of those references did not know who that company was. So from our standpoint, we're like when we're looking for good references, but we weren't receiving any. So I think what we pretty much went through, and I think we found of the 25, we kind of stopped after I think we ran into 8 that were not. So that we can't, if the specifications say this is a requirement and they didn't meet that requirement, we have to show them as non-responsive.
And why did it have to be? I guess I was just curious. Why did it have to be just fields in Texas? Because I know, like for our architecture firms and some of our other firms, we don't have that requirement that it's only in Texas.
Right. In that particular case, that was a specification that I believe was actually brought forth from our engineer and the construction department. So Terry can answer that better than I can.
Thank you. Typically, when you establish a qualifier, and it is a qualifier that it's a regional installation, a regional effort, and you're looking for the ability to perform within a region, in our case, Texas, Central Texas. And so as a qualifier, you're looking to be able to establish the ability to perform successfully, and even among other projects in or about neighboring districts, things of that nature. So it is just a fundamental qualifier to say 20 fields in Texas, and so that we can go back and check these references to say, have you successfully accomplished projects? And in this case, as Mr. Spiegel mentioned, is that checking through due diligence, we found that not all projects that in that due diligence were successful. And so that's why we find that they're non-qualified.
Okay, Ms. Feller.
So I have two questions. The first one is with regards to the contingency fee, of why we've added an additional 10% contingency fee. And then the second one is the bond amount that we put forward to voters for this project was $518,400. And so if that was the amount of dollars that we requested out of 2018 bond funds, why are we requesting to only spend $478,400 out of bond 18 funds?
Thank you for that question, and I'm happy to clarify for you, Ms. Feller. The budget in the bond, as we call it, the Constitution, the budget in the Constitution includes a contingency for a total fee. So there is a construction budget, there's a design budget or a professional budget, as well as a contingency budget. Those budgets in total become that value of the project.
That $518,400.
Right, correct. But when you have a sealed proposal, the sealed proposal comes to you as a price that does not have a contingency in it. And so as you have that price from a sealed proposal, then we're adding 10% for a contingency. So it's not an addition it's a budget that's been established with a contingency in it, but you have to draw a bright line between the budget and then the actual bid proposal.
So help me understand, why do we need a contingency fee if this is an actual bid? We've given, they I'm sure toured the site, or they know what they're doing. Why do we need another 10% based on this is what they're telling us? Their bottom line is they can do it for this amount. Why do we need that contingency?
There's multiple reasons. Typically, the reason that we find contingencies used in this type of project is that the contingency is that it becomes a request to add. For example, could be minor in that we add additional markings on the field or something of that nature, and/or there may be a irrigation line that needs to be changed. And when I say irrigation, it could be outside, maybe a sidewalk or something of that nature. Contingency tends to address minor things that need to be addressed, perhaps as you have a vendor and or a contractor on site working. And so it's just a safeguard. And so typically if you're not spending any contingency dollars, they go directly back into the fund.
So if I still have the question of why we're not spending the whole $518,400 out of the 2018 bond money. But if we decide to supplement with 2008 bond money to cover that last bit of contingency, and that money's not spent, does it go back into the 2008 bond bucket, or does it go back into the 2018 bond bucket?
2018. And so the numeration that you see in competitive sealed proposals such as this nature is organized so that it's addressing only construction budgets. The remainder that you say that why does it not match up? Because there's still a budget that's related to design professional fees. And so there's remaining budget in the design professional fee bucket, if you will. And so once the project is complete, then all remaining fees that have not been spent go into the 2018 surplus.
Okay, so can you address the why aren't we spending the whole $518,400?
Because we're only approving tonight, or requesting to approve tonight, the cost of construction and the cost of the contingency to go with the construction. We're not additionally spending monies that are budgeted for design professionals. Does that make sense to you?
Nope.
Okay.
So let me
Nope.
jump in real quick. I've got a comment. So we've had several AstroTurf changes. I know the contingency fee is sometimes they'll go out and they'll bid on it, and they'll say we think we need to go down 3 feet and redo the base and the gravel and the sand and all that, and then they get there and they find out they need to go down 6 feet, whatever it is.
So I can get behind the contingency fee.
So but they specify. Based on the information we give them, based on, they can't go out there and drill holes and look at, things like that. So that's part of the contingency. And even though the bid on that, and so what was the other part about the construction or the design?
So we asked the voters in the most recent bond for $518,400 to replace the turf at Kelly Reeves. But this action item says that we're only going to spend $478,400. And so this is important because I have the same question on the next action item of if we ask the voters for the money for the 2018 bond, but we're not going to spend all of it out of that money, we automatically now have, I don't have a calculator in front of me, but whatever 478,400 minus 518,400 is, that's pretty easy math, actually. 12. That's $30,000. So we've used $30,000 that we're not tapping into. That's automatically left over in 18 bond money.
Right, and probably the best way to clarify is that we have just put a graphic on the screen, and so this is for the next action item. And so if you'll follow the columns. So you'll see that the column says 2018 bond first sale estimate, and so that is in the case that we're talking about. That would be your $518,400, which includes contingency, design fees, and things of that nature. But if we were looking at the Constitution, you would take out the contingency and the design fees, which would give you a number there. And then as you work through the total, you would see that the contingency is not part of the bid proposal, the sealed bid proposal. That actually is a project cost. And so consequently, you have a budget, you have a constitutional budget or a bond budget, and then one column over is the project cost, and that is a sealed proposal. And that is the costs that are being submitted by the proposers or bidders. And in the following case, and so they're not always going to line up. And you are correct in that you're going to have budgets left over, but they are budgets that are allocated for contingency and design professionals. And then once the project is complete, those funds then go back to surplus.
Okay, so let me just make sure I'm understanding this. Are you saying that the contingency and the design fee that we broke up and assigned to each project is really some greater bucket of a design fee for the entire bond project list?
You always want to stay in units. So if you're working construction dollars in budget, then you work with project cost bid as construction dollars. And if you have dollars that are allocated to design professionals, then you always stay within that unit for design professionals. And so these matrices are designed to only track construction costs. And as we get to the end, we add the 10% contingency. And so at the end of this project, assuming no changes whatsoever, there's no need to assign additional change or a fee to a designer and or that we spend contingency, all monies come back to surplus.
You can't go to Ms. Weir and then come back if you need to?
Well, my last thing about this is there's two, and this goes with the next agenda item. The reason why I asked so much about this is it feels like that we have asked the voters for a certain, and we communicated how much this project was going to cost to the voters, and we said this is how much we're requesting, but then now we're saying, oh, well, we can really pay for part of this out of 2008 bond money, so you shouldn't have asked for that much money in the 2018 sale, is what it feels like to me.
No, well, in this case is that back to the Kelly Reeves case, is that the construction bid price, again, as we go to the apparent bidder at this point, his construction cost is approximately $16,000, I believe, or let me go to this number, approximately $16,000 above the bond construction cost. And so you always stay in units. So the bid price is a little more than the construction available dollars. So in order to stay linear in budget and project controls without going over to this line item, let's move this over and move this over, you stay within the lane that you have budgeted. And so consequently, you go to 2018 or 2008 to support that overage. But as you do, now you have a construction contract. And then you write that construction contract with contingency, knowing that at the point in time that you finish that project, it can go back to 2008 or it could go to 2018. It depends on where you want to replace it.
So just for clarification, it feels like we should delineate the difference in the information. Even if you go to our website, the Round Rock ISD website, and you look at the project list, it just says $518,400 for this project, and it doesn't delineate what's a construction cost and what's a contingency cost. So it's not really clear. That's why I'm having all these questions.
Right. And I understand that the delineation is in that, if you recall back in August, it's that huge spreadsheet that was there on the screen at the time of the bond call, and that's where the delineation actually occurs.
Okay. Ms. Weir?
Sorry for all my questions.
Okay, that's it. Ms. Weir?
No, I appreciate it because I kind of want to follow up because I did send the question about using 2008 bond funds. And I was concerned about that. And actually, I'm even more concerned now that you've said if we don't spend them, they're going into 2018. Because right now, they're, if we have something we need to spend that money on and they're in 2008, we can use it. But if it goes into 2018, then we've got to wait till we're all the way done with all of our projects, right? And that's just concerning. I don't know. Go ahead. I've got more, but go ahead.
And since we have the money, couldn't you just come back to the board and say we've run over or we need more?
And that question is best answered by our financial.
Yeah. So.
Didn't mean to steal your question, Trustee Weir.
Okay. Now, this is what this is about 12:30 today when Terry was in my office, and it's like, okay, explain it to me so that we can explain it to everybody here. And so, Terry and my mind work differently. So let me give you what he lives his world and I live mine. So let me just give you what I think is how I interpret all that's going on. So that first number of $1.1 million, that to me is our promise to the community that when we bonded in 2018 for those 4 reconstructions for just the track, we said it's going to cost. We estimate it's going to cost $1.1 million to make that happen. Hey, reality is when we got the bids back, the price tag for the construction was $361,000 more than that. It was $1 million. It was the second number, the $1,469,000. Okay, so that is where we need additional money. We need to pull from some other source, and the recommended source that we're making is we've got money left over in the 2008 bond. Let's use that to draw from, okay? Because we've got a project that costs more than what we had in the original bond, so that's that math, okay? So the first 4 items, that's the original promise to the community. That's what the project came in at in actuality, and where we're saying we need the 2008 bond fund to make up the difference. The line item 5 of the Cedar Ridge High School turf, that wasn't in the first sale. It was in the second sale, and so we'll ultimately get those funds when we do the second sale. But since there was nothing in that in the first sale, The project came in at $620,000, and so we need 2008 bond to cover that timing issue. So with that, then you go to you have the totals, the next line of the contingency, and what those double asterisks are is that in the 2018 bond amount, that had a contingency in that number, okay? So you don't have to re-add it. Then on the project cost, well, like Terry said, that wasn't, if I'm the bidder and the contractor, I say, here's my price, it doesn't include a contingency in it, so we add the 10%. And so that's another $208,000 of need from the 2008 bond. So we need a total from the 2008 bond of $1.1 million, roughly $1.2 million. I think from a bottom line, if there was money left over, this may be more of a Wayne and Rosanna question, but and that's where I'd kind of defer to them in terms of, hey, do we really have to leave it in 2018? If we're borrowing or if we're using 2008 bond and there's money left over, could we not use 2008 bond, leave it in the 2008?
So this is a little bit different monster than the first one that we're talking about right now, because we're going to get that $620,000 when we do the sales for next year. Mm-hmm. And so we could fund it out of the fund balance until we get the sale money for next year's and just pay ourselves back without spending 2008 bond money, or could we pass a resolution that when we get the bond money that we put it back in? Because I fall back into what Trustee Weir says, that we might need that money that's in 2008 to buy land or to do something else, that we need that cash available at a quicker pace than having to wait until all the projects are finished from the 2018 bond sale.
Yeah, or you could even, I guess I didn't really understand either why something from the first bond sale that's maybe not as urgent as if Cedar Ridge needs this turf could fall into the second sale, and we could flip them so that we're not pulling funds, and we wouldn't even have to do a resolution at that point. We could just flip the projects, and if this really is deemed that much more important, pulling the 2008 bond funds just, it feels wrong. And again, we're at a late hour, and and it's a lot of math, and we've gone on, and I feel again like if we had talked about this in our committee earlier, especially because it seems to be Amber and I.
Well, and part of this is because I served on this committee for the Citizens Bond Committee, and I am intimately aware of all the details and all the, contingency funds and all of those things that we put into place. And I get that projects come in more than what we anticipated them to be. I get that. I don't have any complaints about that, because those were done without taking bids and all of, it was just our guess. And I remember checking as the committee, like, okay, let me just Google how much does it look like it would cost to replace turf. And we were right around the same, but now it's more expensive. So I get that. I don't have a problem with that.
Right. I think from a point of view of a 2008 bond is that one thing that the panel of trustees, the board of trustees here, need to know that there are earmarks still in the 2008 bond for land. It's not just the surplus. And so there's approximately $6 million in the 2008 bond that is earmarked land. And so,
and I just threw land out there because I know we need some land, and I don't know how much it costs to buy land, but other things that could come up. I mean, heck,
that's going up. We know every day.
Yeah.
The price of land is going up.
So those were it just felt weird that we had budgeted money and communicated to the community one amount, but then now we're saying that's not the amount. We're actually going to use some of the older bond funds for it.
Right. Within our collaboration between Dr. Oddix and I's work, if you will, is that in our discussions, Dr. Oddix will obviously chime in on this, and I'll mention this, is that in bond use is that typically you want to use your bond money so that it does not sit stale for more than 5 years, and Dr. Oddix can expand on that. And so the consequence is that this money is sitting there, it will be returned, and I have a quote written on my notes here, is that money is nothing more than a resource. and you go to your resource wherever it's parked, and then you use it. And so consequently, that has been parked for a decade there in 2008. And yes, it may be used for something else, but as we complete this project through the summer, then surpluses go back, because you know that the second bond sale is planned for early 2020. And so land purchases are long-term activities to be able to go through Alta and legal descriptions and things of that nature. So these projects will rotate through quickly, and probably much more quickly than we were able to negotiate and contract and close on real estate and properties. And so that's why we've strategized to use these funds that have been aging out at 2008.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions, and then I recommend we go. Ms. Vesta, do you have a comment? Real quick.
I mean, I just thought it was a good idea to use the money, like we've done that before, where we use general fund balance and then just refunded ourselves from the next bond sale. I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but if we wanted to keep that 2008 money whole, I thought that was a decent option. But I mean, we're not experts, so in a lot of respects, we have to defer to you.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Math.
Yeah, just a quick note. During this riveting conversation, I just did some Googling, and I looked up this Act Global, because they're a local company, and they're actually pretty heavy in the NFL. You know, they've done 4 NFL game fields, and they've done 4 Super Bowl fields, and I don't know, it seems like, were they too expensive, or what?
Mr. Math, no, sir. And I will not repeat because I know some of the comments that came from some of those clients. And so just know that there were some comments that were less than praise. Let's put it that way.
I'll make a comment. We had a company, can't remember the name, maybe it's years ago, I think it was doing this dragon turf. They came in, their spec was, and I don't know who came up with the spec, but it was 46 ounces per square yard. And you said it has to be 46 ounces. And this company came back and they offered so many grams per square meter. And they calculated it, and it wasn't 46 ounces per square yard. So that was a critical number. And that has to do something with the sponginess and how much. And they came back and they were a big FIFA. And they kept saying, we're FIFA. We're all over the world with FIFA. And we didn't set the specs. All I know is that the specs are different from football, high school football, than they are for soccer, international soccer. And they didn't meet the spec. But it was the way they presented it, which was and then it got legal after that. So when you set these specs, you're real clear, right? Yes. The specs are this monofilament, multifilament, whatever.
Correct.
And if they don't meet it, and everybody has the opportunity.
Correct. And one of the things also to point out is that during the, could be 3 to 4 weeks that we had this out on the street, there was opportunity for the vendors to come back and say, we have an issue with some of the specifications. And this particular company was at the pre-proposal conference. There was at least 2 weeks after that pre-proposal conference for them to actually come back to us and say, we have an issue with this, but we did not get any question on it. So there was no request for us to be able to drop that particular specification.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Moses.
Just real quick, I think we provide some good feedback for maybe some future pool funds. I think both trustees Weir and Feller are right. That is probably a good topic for the facilities committee to talk about and hash through in the future to figure out how we want to handle that. But at the end of the day, we also made a promise to get this project done for the voters, and so I think it's important we move that forward, and then we can evaluate in the future how we pull these dollars out and get a better understanding of it. So with that, I move that the board approve Paragon Sports Constructors as the contractor for the Kelly Reeves Athletic Complex turf replacement, and approve the use of $478,400 of Bond 2018 funds and the remaining $65,956 from Bond 2008 fund balance for a total of $544,356.
Second.
A motion, a second, for the Paragon for the Kelly Reeves Turf Complex as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? Motion carries 6-1. All right, thank you. Go to agenda item. We are going to agenda K. Where are we? K3. All right. Competitive seal for turf resurfacing of multiple campuses.
So I think we've already kind of beaten this same horse. It's the same thing, but I would like to request that this be pulled from the agenda tonight and reworked so that we can discuss a resolution to possibly borrow money from the general fund, because while I voted to approve the last one, it was $65,000 out of 2008 bond money. I'm not comfortable with pulling $1.2 million out of the 2008 bond money.
My understanding is this is time critical, but I'm going to leave that up to, because they need to get it started for marching band practice through the summer. But I'm going to.
I think, Terry, because that is time critical. So.
Right. Let me comment in that it is time critical. The 4 tracks are time critical, as well as the turf replacement. And the turf replacement is a special request from the athletic department to be able to establish a field, a new field, because there are 2 fields at Cedar Ridge High School, so both fields should not be torn up simultaneously. So
And I really appreciate that, and I agree with it, because I think that if you're going to do the track, you need to do the turf at the same time. I really do. I just don't think that we should be pulling 2008 bond money for that.
Right. I would suggest that in a motion, if it pleases the Board of Trustees, that to change the motion from 2008 bond to perhaps general fund or something of that nature.
Could we do that?
You have to say what fund, I believe. Just general fund? You can make a motion.
Yeah. As you're doing that, let me just make sure. I think Trustee Moses makes a great point. The fact that we have 2008, 2014 surplus. First, let me just say that's commendable. That's commendable. Most districts, I can tell you, I've been in districts that we didn't have surplus. So the fact that and Amber, I get what you're saying, but I think the discussion can be for future. We heard you loud and clear that from this point forward, a reimbursable resolution might even be in order, general fund balance coming from that. But I think, again, tonight, the fact that we have options, and yes, you have great questions, and I appreciate that, but I think that we have the clarity to understand that we can move these projects forward. From this point forward, though, staff, this is loud and clear that 2008 or 2014 bonds, we need to make sure that it's definitely vetted much earlier than that. That's right. What I've put on the table.
Right. Mr. Moses?
Oh, yeah, and I was just going to we really do in the future, please run these through the committee process just to help. I know that I don't want to, unless it really is something that just comes up like urgent snap of the finger. We have our committees for a reason. And I think that helps address some of these questions before, helps get some resolution before we get to this point at this hour.
Right,
so
right, Mr. Moses, and I very much respect that, and I hear that very loud and clear. And so these projects are just rolling out very quickly, given the time frame. And so,
okay.
Right.
And so I'll make the motion again. I move that the board approve Hellas Construction as the contractor for the track resurfacing and turf replacement multiple campuses project, and approve the use of $1,107,496 of bond 2018 funds and the remaining $1,190,442 from bond 2008 fund balance for a total of $2,297,938.
Second.
Got a motion and a second for Hellas for $2,297,938 for track replacement, track and turf, multiple campuses. Any further discussion?
Can I just say something? So if I'm just thinking through this. Okay, so if we use this, what are we going to do with the money that's sitting in the round 2? Where does it sits in 2000? Wouldn't it be, as soon as we sell it, wouldn't it just be surplus?
Yep.
And then would that be available to use for other purchases right away?
No, not necessarily, because based upon bond financing and budget coding, is that the money that comes with the sale of bond is coded to specific projects, and so consequently, just using the money here for a random project, no, and that's why we find ourselves in either consistently asking for reimbursable resolution and or to use surplus bond fund.
Well, and I think it's also important to remember that, I mean, again, everything on the bond was a very, very good educated guess.
And that's not the issue.
Yeah, but my point is that the educated guess may be, like in this case, or the prior case, it was a little over budget. And I think there's probably going to be some estimates that are going to come in, they're going to be under budget, and others are going to be over budget. And we're going to probably have a situation where, you know what, some scope kind of happened, and now we got to come in and we didn't know this was going to occur. And so it's, again, about just banking up those reserves at an appropriate level where if something like that occurs, we're prepared.
That's exactly right, Mr. Moses, is that we're so new into the 2018 bond that we haven't had a chance
There's so many projects to go.
Right. It's a marathon, and we are just at the beginning of this.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for Hellas for $2.297 million. Yes, Ms. Feller.
Help me with Robert's rules here. If I want to make a motion and change it to where we're taking it out of general fund, can I do that now?
You can, you can make a motion to amend it. Again, you're welcome to make a motion and get a second, then we vote on that. But the recommendation is to use our 08. And so.
But just a clarification there, if we use, it just decreases the amount of available money that we have for.
It's coming out of one bucket or the other.
Yeah. It's actually not, because the money that it will eventually come back to us, but it may be for several years. That's the difference. Like, I mean, we'll get it back, like for sure. But it's just that 2018 has to close out first, and then we get it back.
All I remember is we did a motion, a reimbursement resolution one time a couple years ago, I think, for some land. The bond didn't pass, so it's. That's.
Well, we've already done it a couple of times this year for buses and things like that.
But this was for this bond, wasn't it?
Right. Recall that a reimbursable resolution is a tool to be able to backstop purchase orders, and so that was work to be able to backstop and start projects until the money arrived, knowing that the sale of the bond was more of a slow roll. It arrived in May, just recently, and so consequently we needed to write purchase orders to be able to get to these projects so that we could actually design these projects.
Buses would be ready for the start of the year and things like that.
So I have one last clarification question, Dr. Audix. If I make this motion to pull this money out of the operating budget, can we, and maybe it's not for you, but can we pass a resolution later to reimburse that expenditure? Like if we don't have the resolution written tonight, can we come back at our next board meeting?
I don't think so. I think you have to do that in advance, and I wouldn't recommend. Don't you have to do that in advance, reimbursement? I'm not sure, but we've always had the resolution here, and we've said this one you're changing it on the fly, and I think.
So here's an idea. I mean, board's real clear that you want to leave the 2008 bond alone, okay? But on the one, so the question would be this: if we just let this one go through, and then on a go-forward basis, we don't touch the 2008 bond, anything going forward, we ask for a reimbursement resolution to go at the general fund, all that sort of thing, so that the remaining money, which on both the 2008 bond, which would still have money in it, as well as the 2014 bond, has $6.5 million left in it. So there would still be, considerable money between those two bonds. That if we just said, hey, we're not touching them, we're just going to do reimbursement resolution to the general fund. That, to me, would be the cleanest way of letting this work go through, all that sort of thing, not having to do a last-minute reimbursement resolution. Is it legal? Is it not legal? But given clear direction going forward, leave the 2008, 2014 unallocated funds alone, and we can absolutely.
Well,
do
it's
that.
not necessarily even about leaving that money alone. It's just about doing what we've said we're going to do, communicating that clearly to the public. And I feel like we asked the public for a certain amount of money to do a project, and now we're trying to pay for it out of a different bucket of money, and then that extra money is now left in the 2018 bucket. Does that make sense? Like if we had $1.2 million out of the 2008 bond money to do these projects, then we shouldn't have asked voters for $1.2 million. I mean, that's how it looks to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess,
Maybe not.
Yeah.
No, I think it makes sense. I think the point that you're making is sound.
Okay.
I think it makes sense, but I also could view it a completely different way, where it's we're going to go ahead and use dollars we have in order to keep. We're going to use our checking account. Or we're going to dip in, pick a bank. We're going to use our money out of this account because we want to keep more money in this account in case something happens. Or I'm not going to touch my investment account. I'm going to take it out of savings because I want to keep that money growing over there and being used later. Even though I could take it out of that, I think Chad's right. We're taking out of one bucket.
But the general fund we can use for a lot of things. I
Right.
think the 08 bond it's for INS and it's for something you can touch. Whereas the general fund we can use it for. I think it's you have more flexibility. I would like to take it out of. And I've never heard the word stale money in this case, but that's
One thing, because this was at investment officer training that Rosanna and Wayne and I went to, and what Terry referred to, what they literally told us there is that when a district issues a bond, the real intent is those funds should be spent within 5 years, because otherwise, and so I don't like the idea of, well, hey, we'll just keep 2008 bond in our hip pocket for 15. We were already 11 years. I mean, we're already way past what the guidance is. And so it's just giving you that feedback. It's not a deal of, hey, it's just okay. We'll just keep that there for 11 years, 15 years. That's not really the intent of when you do a bond. You really want to get those funds spent.
Okay. So I'm not
Okay.
going to make another motion.
Okay, so we have a motion.
But I'm
Okay.
not going to vote for this either, which is really conflicting because my kids will benefit from this project directly. But I still don't agree with it. So.
Okay, you have the right to do that. So, all right, we have a motion and a second for Hellas, the $2.297 million. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? Motion carries 5-2. All right, thank you. All right, we'll go to agenda items K4, buy board for playground and shade structures.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwell. And to wrap up the action items, obviously, buy board is a different vehicle, and it is a purchase consortium. And as we approach purchase consortium, there are listed vendors on that, and through that purchase consortium, rather than just go to one vendor, we elected to use 3 different vendors with a standardized specification so that they could all propose a price for a standard playground apparatus. And so what we're working on tonight is phase 1, which is the procurement of the apparatus and the installation. There will be a follow-up of phase 2, which will be demolition and turf and removal of the pea gravel. But this allows us to make an order so that we have the materials on their way for the summer.
Okay, Ms. Weir.
I just had one quick question since we didn't get a chance to talk. I was just curious why the different prices. TF Harper has the same price for both of theirs. Fun Abounds is different at Anderson Mill than at Canyon Creek. And then We Build Fun is, a little bit in the middle of everybody.
Right. Trustee Weir, what you'll find is that when proposers are working in different sites, because they've obviously been assigned a different site, they may interpret their work differently. For example, there may be more slope to the site, or there may be more concrete or things of that nature. So it is not always linear. So they have the option of being able to make those changes because they're proposing independently and not competing against another vendor.
Ms. Feller.
I was just going to make the motion.
Okay, go for it.
I move that the board approve the use of $955,477.30 of Bond 2018 funds for playground and shade structure projects, Phase 1 at multiple campuses as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for $955,477.30 as presented for playground and shade as presented. Any further discussion?
Just one. I know this was a really big deal to trustee fellow over here during the bond process, so.
Yay!
Okay. It's been a long time. So any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 7-0. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Well, I applaud the board for being fun. All right.
I agree with that. Like, I was actually debating. I said something at 9 o'clock because it is 11:15, and we're making the most important decisions really late at night, and they're important decisions that we need to. I don't know. Like, I know we want to be respectful to our staff, but we have to be like on point when we make these decisions. And it's 11:16, and many of us I can't even imagine how early Steve got up because he had to travel today. So it's just
5 o'clock.
Was it 5? I guess it's Central Time. You were in Chicago.
I'm all in favor, and I gave an effort. Said we want to try to get out of here at a decent hour. We have a lot of questions, so that's a decision we make as a board.
So are we going to have this discussion? Are you going to move on?
I'm getting ready to go to
let's talk about
the public comments, communications. L.
Okay, so let's talk about the length of the board meeting right now. Let's just have it out. I mean, I'm delirious too. So what I've been thinking about at 11:16 is basically what we've had are 2 board meetings right here. So what other school districts do is within the week of the board meeting, they have a workshop beforehand. And at this point, I think we owe it to staff. I think we owe it to ourselves to really think about that. There are a lot of questions. And I see board members voting on things that normally they would have voted for, but they want additional information. So I really think that we need to explore the idea of having a workshop before each board meeting so we can actually make really sound decisions at this point. And I don't see how any of you can think otherwise.
All right. We've had discussion. We can't really go too much into detail. This is go for future announcements. I'm open for discuss any option. We're trying let me go to public communications. We have none. Is that correct? Let me go to agenda item M, Facilities Finance Committee. And this kind of is related. So Ms. Weir and then Mr. So.
It is hopefully, well, we didn't really have a meeting in May. April 26th was our last meeting, and we really went over use of portables and campus enrollments and demographics to try to start looking at some long-term options to relieve some of the campus enrollment issues and things like that. And we're definitely going to go back to it since we couldn't make any decisions. Policy doesn't allow us to do anything except for between October and March, but we're hoping to have discussions and be able to come back by October, maybe with some different ideas. We had for future agenda items unused bond funds, some non-bond projects that we're going to talk about, and also the idea of setting up a SHAC-like committee for facilities where it would be a 3-year commitment where we have citizens looking at things, getting things ready, boundaries, bond items, all that sort of thing. So hopefully we'll be able to bring that to the group soon.
Just real quick on that, we do have a boundaries committee, and then also I think the facilities I actually think is valid. I think that we had a lot of members of the bond leadership team who were interested on meeting on a more ongoing basis. So I just didn't want, even if we had a boundaries committee already, but the facilities one I think has merit.
Yeah, and it would be more like it would be a long term where you weren't, where you knew kind of like on the SHAC what commitment you're getting into.
You're in this.
Yeah, you're in it. So don't think it's just a month or a couple meetings and then you're gone.
Okay. Agenda item M2, Policy Innovation Budget Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just real briefly, we did make some more progress on AE Local, which is our educational philosophy We're working on kind of fine-tune that language, so in the future we'll bring that as a possible agenda item, an action item. CJ Local, which is dealing with the way we go through the purchasing and reviewing process, really has to do with our contracted services, so the ones that the board approves. So similarly to what we did with when we hired our new council, set up a process where every 5 years there's some that we would review, look at, hear a recommendation from staff on whether or not we need to put that out for an RFP, or the board can weigh in if there's something we feel like we need to go out, but at least where it's an ongoing, regular rotation so we can make sure we're staying competitive in the marketplace. Also, we already talked about the $10 million going for the capital projects, so we'll get that future. Also, and Dr. Presley, if you want to touch on this, feel free to. Starting this next year at Kelly Reeves and Dragon Stadium for football games, just for football games, we're going to have a clear bag policy. This isn't something that the board needs to approve, but it's just kind of an FYI. And what that means is that you have a clear bag to go into the stadium.
Just FYI, if you need one, we have McNeil ones for sale. I can't remember which booster club sells them, but we already have them.
I have a feeling I'm probably going to end up with 5 of them. Mm-hmm. And then also, Kenneth is looking at this, and I'm sure we'll bring it to the board for future discussion regarding our needs of bus routes. We have about 20 right now that we have at least, well, I don't know if you want to call it a shortage or an issue with drivers, trying to make sure they're properly covered. And so he's going to be looking at some solutions there for potentially next year. So it would be knowing that's coming down the pipe. Also, he touched on the efficiency audits that are going on to try and, again, improve the district operations, which I think are going to be a great thing. And then the last one is at some point we will probably be coming to the board about trying to find the best solution for our pre-K and kindergarten kids, them getting on and off buses. We're still hearing about that from some folks about just maybe evaluate whether or not it's at what grade we're okay with, hey, you don't have to have a parent here. You can go in some grades, and your parent or guardian needs to be here to pick you up off the bus.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moses. Ms. Vessa.
So another thing that we talked about, probably the longest actually, was the teaching and learning budget and going through all of the different ways in which that budget is used. And we were provided with a breakdown of all the positions that are funded out of teaching and learning and the different, the other different non-salary expenditures funded out of that budget. And so that was a really helpful start to a discussion of whether some of these things that are coded for teaching and learning really should be in that budget, because as I pointed out before, it's quite a bit bigger than any other district in the state. And maybe we should, there were quite a bit of costs that could be maybe possibly switched to special education. I don't know if typically instructional technology specialists are funded out of this category, but it's just those are two areas that I saw that maybe we want to recode because they don't necessarily reflect that they should come out of that budget. But that's for a future discussion. We didn't really get into it in the meeting.
And then the last thing is just a future agenda item that I know a couple of y'all have talked about, and we're now at the point where you feel like we can have that conversation, is on our open records request process, and so that will be on the agenda at our next meeting.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, it's not actually a budget, it's a function code from across the organization, just to clarify.
Yeah, it's just how we're coded in PEMS and like how it's reported to the state, and when people look at our allocations, that it would be true to like what we're actually spending in that area, rather than, I think it might be a little bit not true to what we're actually spending the money on.
Okay. All right, so go to agenda item M3, announcements, updates, requests for future agenda items. Do we want to, you have something, Ms. Weir?
Well, I had two things.
Okay.
First of all, I just wanted to let everybody know that I did meet with Jimmy Flanagan on Wednesday, and Jenny Caputo was there also, and we had a really good meeting. I haven't had a chance to write anything up. I will hopefully maybe tomorrow morning write something up for Patty to send out to everybody, and a link to their resolution. But it was all very positive. There really haven't been any negatives for the city of Austin.
Repeat again what it's for.
It's for the message board for council members to be able to discuss. And there were some things, and I know Jenny was taking notes too. I know Mason was worried about cost a little bit. He said it was one guy. It was open source software that they used, and they would be happy to help us set it up. There's no maintenance cost for it because you don't take anything down. It just sits there. You can take it down after 6 months, but they don't. They just leave it all up, and they've never had any negative pushback. They've never had any, as a practical matter, they don't debate, but it's just for information, and I can write all that up for everybody. But it was really, really positive, and he's excited for us and said he would help Jenny, her staff, and if Mark Gephardt's staff has to come in and get it all done for us. So I think that was really positive. My only other thing was, and it came up at both of the town halls and again today, and I see one of our interpreters, but we don't have, I brought it up initially that we weren't having any sort of way for our deaf community to be part of these meetings. And I know we'd seen that software come up at some point. We'd looked at it, and then it just sort of never came back around. And I'd like us at some point to really talk about that. I mean, because I know that, I don't know about Live Oak, but I know at Deer Park and McNeil, we do always try to have, for our parents that come in that are part of our deaf community, have an interpreter there. And it is important for us to have that.
The city of Austin they have a real time as the video plays. If they have a meeting, it's translated. Just like if you go to a YouTube and you go to the lower right corner and you click on it, it does a pretty good job of translating. But I'm open, and I know we have the interpreters. So, Dr. Flores, if that's something you can look into, requirements legally and, as just a good courtesy. Yes, ma'am.
Remember how I talked about that software that does the timestamp and
Yep.
would that have an ability to get transcription? Because if we had that, then it would.
Yeah, and you can transcribe afterwards. I mean, I Googled it just for my own information initially when we were talking about it, and to get it done after the meeting is fairly inexpensive. It's the real time that I think
the city of Austin has that. If you watch their meetings, it scrolls across and it's real time. So just like we're speaking, it goes right across the screen. I don't know how they do that, but I'm sure it's a combination, but it's pretty accurate. So, all right. So one more thing. Do we want to have a June 6th workshop, everybody but Mr. Moses?
Could we possibly, it's my wife's birthday.
She can come visit. She can come visit.
There's nowhere she'd rather be than here. And I guarantee she was watching earlier. She's still watching. I'm trying to do something sweet, honey, please. Yeah.
I'm going to be in town that week. We have.
See here.
Tuesday the 4th.
I think I can do the 4th. Right.
But no, I feel bad making it.
So, but a Thursday, you could do a Thursday. Do you want to do the next Thursday? You want to do Monday? How about Monday the 3rd? No?
Would that matter for you, Steve?
Hard for you to get? Okay. Friday the 7th?
I'm out on Friday.
We can do. Oh, that's right. You're starting this closed session. Okay. Well, okay.
Looks like the 4th.
I don't want to put Steve. I don't want.
So it's going to be one of you guys.
Yeah, and I don't want. I feel bad moving it if it's.
That's okay. I will watch.
Okay. I really.
So Steve has to miss more because he's traveling more now. So I feel like we should Sorry, Mason, but I feel like
No,
we
no, no,
should
that's
leave it on
fine.
Thursday
That-
so that
hey,
Steve has the.
that's what I'm saying.
I would like
It
to
is
accommodate.
what it is.
I'd like to accommodate Steve a couple times, but we can always do 2.
It is what it is. I mean, I'm not trying. I mean, if it was one of the things, if it worked out great. If not, I'm going to have a fun conversation later.
You can come to part of the meeting and then go out to dinner.
Just bring her to the meeting.
Bring her to the meeting.
We will sing.
All right.
happy
So what do
birthday
we
to her.
decide? Real quick. What do we decide? The 4th or 6th?
6th.
Yeah,
The
it's
6th,
like-
I
it is
think.
what it is.
Stay with the 6th.
Yeah.
6th.
Okay. Stay with the 6th. All right.
And it's official. It's no longer a tentative date, right?
It's a what?
It's an official date now. We're not
Yeah,
tentative.
we had it. I had it on my reserved here. So
So I'll see you the 6th. But if you don't hear from me by noon on the 7th, somebody please do a well check.
all right. You can always do it. So all right. Anything else? So we got the graduations coming up. What's that?
I think we have success graduation from 7 to
Successes,
9
those are all
on.
great.
Can Patty, can you make sure that, I mean, for the new trustees, that we have all the information for
How
that graduation?
How
'Cause-
early we have to be there and all that,
Yep.
because I was shocked by the 6:45 thing.
I know.
For the
So-
other 2 days.
Oh yeah,
All
we
right.
have to be there at 6:45 a.m.
You can actually get there a little bit late. It's just the crowd, the cars driving in. So anything, anyway, other thing else? With that, we are adjourned at 11:30.